Chapter 123. The Sky Academy acted quickly. Li Tianlan and the others had already received the news when they went to the sniper class. At the same time, the personnel transfer of the Sky Academy had also spread throughout the academy. Yi Fengcheng Tribulation, Lu Xiuyuan by Yu Ming. From behind these people, it was not difficult to see the advance and retreat and attitude of several groups in Zhongzhou State in the Sky Academy. The transfer of Tribulation, Yi Fengcheng, and even by Yu Ming was undoubtedly a hidden cooperation between the academics, the giant group, and the Wang family of Beihai. As for Lu Xiuyuan joining the Sky Academy, it was a big move by the Special Warfare Group to try to run the teaching office and help the extremely passive Gu Yunxia to reverse the situation. However, it was obvious that this seemingly wonderful move of Kunlun City was a big bad move. On the surface, Lu Xiuyuan's position could not be changed for the time being. But in private, Li Tianlan's vicious dog joined the teaching office. In a sense, he could already grasp some of the situation in the teaching office through Lu Xiuyuan. Plus, there was tribulation in the political department. He could be said to be his own people in the real sense, far from the cooperative relationship with Zhuang Huayang. Li Tianlan's foundation in the Sky Academy was finally stabilized. In front of the general trend of Zhongzhou State, and even the Dark World, he was now as small as an ant. But at least in the Sky Academy, Li Tianlan was already qualified to join this game. Lu Xiuyuan, Lu Dongyu, perhaps neither Gu Yunxia nor Gu Yulan would have thought that this pair of father and daughter was equivalent to a magnifying glass that Li Tianlan put beside them. Most of their moves would be secretly observed by Li Tianlan. Now Li Tianlan's foundation was still shallow, but his momentum had begun to take shape. Compared with his shallow foundation, his strength was his biggest shortcoming. The new instructor of the actual combat lesson turned out to be a nominal disciple of Jade Pool. Qiancheng, is he from your border control corps? How about it? Do you understand? On the school bus, Li Beitian, who was sitting in the last row, looked at the announcement on his wristwatch and asked casually. Bai Yuming, the first miss of the Bai family, is said to be named by Great Master Wu Wei. She is also one of Great Master Wu Wei's nominal disciples. Hua Qingfeng, the head of the Shadow Sect, who ranks 10th among the top 10 contemporary experts in Zhongzhou State, seems to have a teacher-student relationship with her. She has a special status in Jade Pool. Although she is only a nominal disciple, her treatment is no different from that of a lineal disciple. She mainly practices floating life sword rain and flying fire meteor sword. She has the strength in the stabilization phase of the thundershocking realm. Ning Qianqing opened the window of the school bus, lit a cigarette, and said calmly. There were a few people from other dormitories who were going to class with them. Looking at the smell of smoke in the carriage, no one said anything. The people closest to them quietly stood up and moved further away from them. Ning Qianqing calmly stubbed out the cigarette butt and looked at Li Tianlan, wanting to say something but stopping on second thought. What? Is there anything I can't say? Li Tianlan noticed Ning Qianqing's gaze and said casually with a smile. I'm afraid Bai Yuming has bad intentions this time. Ning Qianqing hesitated and looked at Wang Yuerong. The little princess had put her arm around Li Tianlan's neck, bit his ear and said, Qianqing is the confidant of Marshal Dongqing, so he can't say some gossip. Bai Yuming is the niece of Bai Qingqian, the current secretary of Guangdong province, and also Marshal Dongqing's niece. In terms of reputation, Bai Yuming can even be as famous as second uncle. Marshal Dongqing and Bai Qingqian seem to have a bad relationship these years, especially Bai Qingqian and the old master of the Dongqing clan. Bai Yuming naturally wants to help her aunt. Old Master Dongqing thinks highly of you, but Bai Qingqian doesn't like you, especially when they are members of the Bai family. The Bai family, the Zhou family, and the Dongqing clan are the backbone of the giant group of Zhongzhou State. The Dongqing clan values you, but if the Bai family doesn't like you, the Dongqing clan, especially the marshal, will be in a difficult position. Li Tianlan's expression was calm. If that was the case, not only Dongqing Wudi would be in a difficult position, but even he himself would be in a difficult position. Most of the time, the enemy who was not the enemy was the most troublesome. If Bai Yuming really made him uncomfortable, how to fight back without destroying the relationship between the giant group was what Li Tianlan had to consider. After all, no matter what the Dongqing clan was planning, At least they were treating him well now. But it is said that Dongqing Qiuqi and Bai Yuming have a very good relationship. This may be a breakthrough. Wang Yuetong continued to give Li Tianlan ideas. Let's take one step at a time. Things may not be what we think. Li Tianlan smiled lightly, but a trace of contemplation flashed in his eyes. After the master of Samsara Palace and the governor of Sai City, respectively challenged two invincible realm experts of Kunlun City, the mobilization of the Sky Academy was quickly announced to the public. The mobilization involved 4 people: Yi Fengcheng, Tribulation by Yu Ming, and Lu Xiuyuan. Yi Fengcheng represented the Wang family of Beihai. Bai Yuming showed the intention of the giant group to intervene in the Sky Academy. Lu Xiuyuan entered the teaching office, representing Gu Xingyun's face. Even if the god of war of Zhongzhou state compromised, he must need a fig leaf. Lu Xiuyuan was the fig leaf. In secret, the task force that had gone to Huading to investigate the cause of Gu Changjiang's death and Yang Mengjiang's disappearance had secretly withdrawn to Yuzhou. This was a real compromise. It didn't mean that Gu Xingyun gave up investigating the truth. It could only mean that he had no time to care about other things for the time being. For Li Tianlan, the longer the better. Giving Gu Xingyun a fig leaf to cover up his embarrassment was allowed by all parties. Tribulation represented Sai City's right to speak in the Sky Academy. Sai City and the academics were allies, but allies and their own people were two completely different concepts. In this way, in terms of the result, the Wang family of Beihai, the giant group, and Sai City gained something from the deal led by the academics. Only the academics got nothing. How could it be a situation where they got nothing? Li Tianlan was not surprised, but he clearly smelled the aura of power again. Crippling Zhong Xiaofeng, killing Gu Changjiang, besieging Yang Mengjiang, killing Su Yunzong. At this moment, Li Tianlan suddenly realized that he seemed to have inadvertently pushed something forward. The aura of power was so obvious that it had almost reached the point where he was about to hit his face. Obscure, intense, the storm was about to rise, and the mountain rain was about to come. June 15th. There was less than a month and a half left. What on earth was the academics planning? He took a deep breath, and his eyes grew quieter. In the general trend he was just a nobody, but he inadvertently became a very key pawn. Many things were beyond his control, and he couldn't control them. Should he go with the flow or go against the trend? Go against the trend. Li Tianlan repeated the word silently in his heart, and shook his head with a wry smile. How could he have the qualification to go against the trend? Senior brother, what are you thinking about? Wang Yuetong asked softly, looking at Li Tianlan, who had been silent for a long time and thoughtful. I'm thinking about the sniper class later. Li Tianlan came to his senses and said casually with a smile. In the dark world, no matter how brilliant an individual's martial strength was, marksmanship could never be ignored. After entering the fire-flaming realm, ordinary bullets were no longer a threat, but some special firearms with special bullets were still very threatening. 1 or 2 shots might not be a problem, but more shots could also kill one. The Sky Academy divided the firearms course into firearms control and sniper class, which was enough to show the importance the Academy attached to this aspect. Purely comparing these two courses, the importance of sniper class was definitely above that of firearms control. Sniper class emphasized both theory and actual combat, and it was divided into battlefield sniper and special sniper. Wang Tianqing, the instructor of the course, was a master of marksmanship. This instructor, who came from a branch of the Wang family of Beihai, had limited talent in martial arts, and even had no hope of entering the thunder-shocking realm in his life. But in terms of marksmanship he was a real genius. He was good at making and modifying guns, and he used all kinds of guns wonderfully. He was no worse than Wang Xiaojie, the leader of the firearms course group. It was said that Wang Tianqing was good at using an extremely ferocious-looking heavy sniper. Although he was only in the fire-flaming realm, with a heavy sniper in hand, it was enough to make most of the thunder-shocking realm experts' scalps numb. It was almost his limit to play with guns to this extent. Even in Li Tianlan's heart, even if his level of ordinary firearms was a little worse, he would strive to be the best in the sniper class no matter what. Don't worry, senior brother. It's okay. I'll talk to my uncle later. Even if you fail, Your credits won't be deducted, Wang Yuetong said with a smile. It could be seen that she was very familiar with Wang Tianqing. I'll accompany you to the shooting range tonight. I'm very good at sniping. I'll teach you. Li Tianlong glanced at her with a smile and nodded. Although Wang Tianqing was from a branch of the Wang family of Beihai, he was a very important one in the whole Wang family of Beihai. As the chief instructor of sniper tactics in the Wang family of Beihai, he was a well-deserved high-level official in the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Yuetong's marksmanship might even have been taught by Wang Tianqing himself. The school bus arrived at the teaching building. Li Tianlan and the others got off the bus and rushed to the classroom in silence. The classroom of the sniper class was located on the third floor. There were few students around Li Tianlan, who arrived on time. The whole teaching building was quiet. They were about to turn the corner on the third floor. A calm and gentle voice suddenly came from the corner on the fourth floor. Big guy, you're a freshman. You should get to know the situation of the school first, especially in your class. Everyone is the best in the school. Even if you're strong, you should keep a low profile. You can think about other things after you figure out the situation. Do you understand? Yes. A deep, thunderous voice responded, quiet and resolute. The calm and gentle voice continued. In this class, you should pay attention to two people. You'd better not provoke them now or in the future. One is Gu Yulan, the direct disciple of the first elder of Kunlun City. The other is Li Tianlan. He's a person that even the headmaster thinks highly of. He's cruel and merciless. If you fall into his hands, no matter who you are, you won't necessarily have a good ending. Li Tianlan subconsciously stood where he was a little stunned. He didn't expect that he had such a fierce reputation in the Sky Academy now. Footsteps came down from upstairs. A middle-level leader of the teaching office accompanied a man in his 30s and slowly went downstairs. Li Tianlan finally realized the meaning of the word big guy. How could he be a big guy? He was simply a little giant. He was nearly 2 meters tall, with a rock-like appearance and explosive muscles. His momentum was like a mountain and a raging fire, calm and fierce. Li Tianlan's pupils shrank subconsciously. He felt the power that was almost blowing on his face, and his heart became heavy. Is this a freshman? A freshman who just came to report? The teacher who accompanied the big guy also saw Li Tianlan. He suddenly froze and thought of what he had just said. He didn't know whether Li Tianlan heard it or not. He felt a little guilty at first. He stopped and said with a smile, Tianlan, you're here for class? Hello, teacher. Li Tianlan greeted him with a warm smile. The teacher nodded and continued to walk to the classroom with the big guy. The big guy took a step forward, then stopped abruptly. Are you Li Tianlan? He asked, his eyes falling directly on Li Tianlan. It was not a hostile tone, but the natural sense of oppression made Li Tianlan subconsciously straighten his body. I am, Li Tianlan said calmly. The big guy took a deep breath. The next second, he quickly walked down the stairs and walked directly toward Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's body shook, but the big guy in front of him suddenly knelt on one knee in front of Li Tianlan. His burly body, which was almost 150 kilograms but not fat, knelt down, and the whole corridor seemed to shake with him. The big guy's rock-like face slowly lowered, and he said in a deep voice, Su Chu pays respect to young Master Tianlan. Everyone was dumbfounded. Chapter 124. For the first time, Li Tianlan experienced the so-called feeling of having a tiger's body tremble and a follower kowtow. Pleasure and so on were completely **t. The inexplicable feeling of astonishment was all he felt now. Young Master Tianlan? He seems to be calling me, but when did I become a young master? He was 100% sure that he had never seen this majestic giant before. A person he had never met suddenly knelt in front of him. This feeling was really a little indescribable. Li Tianlan had no time to think. The moment the giant in front of him knelt down, he instinctively squatted down and tried to help him up. But the giant's strength was so great and his attitude was even more resolute. He knelt on one knee with great strength. Li Tianlan was caught off guard, and could only follow him to kneel on one knee. Young master, no. Su Chu's expression changed greatly. He had been kneeling on one knee, but this time he simply put both knees on the ground. He bent down and was about to kowtow to Li Tianlan. The feeling of full strength still impacted everyone. At this moment, Li Tianlan even felt that with Su Chu's strength, this kowtow was enough to smash the entire corridor. Stop, stop, stop! Li Tianlan finally came to his senses. He pressed Su Chu's big head and said with the corner of his mouth twitching, "Who are you?" They were dumbfounded. Everyone was dumbfounded. The scene in front of them was too strange. Not only Li Tianlan, but also the teacher of the teaching office who Su Chu went to the classroom opened his mouth wide and could not come to his senses for a long time. "I'm Su Chu." Su Chu looked at Li Tianlan and introduced himself seriously, but the content was extremely empty, which made Li Tianlan even more puzzled. "Aunt Bai asked me to take care of you, young master." He grinned. When he didn't smile, Su Chu gave people an extremely tough feeling. But once he smiled, he looked a little simple and honest. "Young master, I can cook, drive, fight?" Eldest senior brother? Ning Qiancheng finally came to his senses in this strange scene. Looking at Su Chu kneeling in front of Li Tianlan, the corner of his mouth twitched and he cried out in disbelief. "Why did you go down the mountain?" "Aunt Bai asked me to come." Su Chu looked at Ning Qiancheng with a smile. His eyes were soft, and he slowly stopped smiling. The simple and honest look on him faded quickly, leaving only a kind of fierceness full of surging power. "Aunt Bai?" Hearing this title again, Li Tianlan subconsciously froze and asked tentatively, "Is it Secretary Bai Qingqian?" Su Chu nodded and looked at Li Tianlan with increasingly kind eyes. It was a kind of respect that came from the bottom of his heart, and it could even be said to be pious. Li Tianlan felt his scalp go numb. Wang Yuetong just told him that Bai Qingqian and Old Master Dongqing had a big conflict. Under normal circumstances, Old Master Dongqing liked him. It was good enough that Bai Qingqian didn't vent her anger on him. How could she send this fierce person from Jade Pool to take care of him? Eldest senior brother. Then he would be the first disciple of the Jade Pool. His status was absolutely extraordinary. However, judging from Su Chu's current expression, it was clear that he regarded himself as a servant. The word young master Tianlan had fully demonstrated his concept of hierarchy. What else did Secretary Bai say? Li Tianlan asked. He was a little confused. There were some problems that he couldn't figure out even if he wanted to think about it. For example, the attitude of the Dongqing clan toward him, and Bai Qingqian's intention. For Li Tianlan, these were all mysteries. Su Chu wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Finally, he scratched his big head and said honestly, "Young master, you'd better ask Elder Yuming." Bai Yuming was a nominal disciple of Jade Pool. Her seniority was relatively vague, but now she was the youngest elder of the thunder-shocking realm in Jade Pool. Her status was still very distinguished. He and Bai Yuming came to the Sky Academy at the same time. Bai Qingqian did say something. Before they came to Huating, the extraordinary woman in the political circle of Zhongzhou State bluntly said that Old Master Dongqing was unfathomable and scheming. She told Li Tianlan to be careful not to fall into a trap or be doomed eternally. These words were absolutely straightforward, but Dongqing Wudi was Su Chu's youngest martial uncle. Now that he was asked to speak ill of his martial uncle's father, he couldn't do it anyway. It was better to let Elder Hades do it. Li Tianlan shook his head and stood up. He took the opportunity to pull Su Chu up and said, "Let's go to class first or we'll be late." He didn't know what to do with Su Chu. Bai Qingqian's attitude was even weirder than that of the Dongqing clan. No matter how to deal with this matter, he planned to let Dongqing Wudi know first and see what he thought before deciding what to do. "Okay." Su Chu nodded, stood up, and stamped his feet casually. He didn't seem to use much strength, but the whole corridor trembled slightly. Li Tianlan and others could even clearly hear the slight trembling of the glass in the nearby classrooms. Such strength was really like lifting up a mountain. The corner of Li Tianlan's eyes twitched. Even if he were blind, he could see that the eldest disciple of Jade Pool in front of him not only had the thunder vein, but also had the kind of thunder vein that had grown to a certain extent. With such divine power, he would be a brave general wherever he was. Li Tianlan looked at the teacher of the teaching office standing beside him with a weird expression, nodded and said, "Sorry to trouble you, teacher." It's my duty. This is all my job. The teacher smiled and said in a more cautious tone. After killing Lu Xiuwei and Su Yunzong, at least in the Sky Academy, Li Tianlan was no longer a nobody. Even the whole East Emperor Palace was notorious. He was a thorn in the eyes of Director Gu Yunxiao of the teaching office, and a delicious cake in the eyes of the headmaster. Among this year's freshmen, Li Tianlan and his members of East Emperor Palace were one of the people who couldn't be ignored. Even most of the teachers of the academy should maintain some basic respect for such a figure. Li Tianlan watched the teacher of the teaching office leave with Su Chu and subconsciously narrowed his eyes. In that case, the arrival of Bai Yuming is a good thing for senior brother. Wang Yuetong was silent for a while, and took the initiative to speak. Too many so-called good things may not really be a good thing, especially these things come too inexplicably. Li Tianlan shook his head and looked at Ning Qiancheng. Ning Qiancheng's identity was similar to Su Chu's. They were both disciples of Jade Pool. The former was sent to him by Dongqing Wudi, while the latter was sent by Bai Qingqian. What did this couple, who were said to be incompatible with each other, want to do? I don't know much about first senior brother. Seeing Li Tianlan's eyes, Ning Qiancheng shook his head slightly. I just heard that he was picked up by the old master of the Bai family many years ago, and then sent to Jade Pool. It can be said that he is half a member of the Bai family. He is the pro-disciple of martial uncle master of the sect. He rarely goes down the mountain since he was a child, so he is not famous. How's his strength? Li Tianlan asked softly. Very strong. Ning Qiancheng's eyes flickered subconsciously. He should be at the fulfillment of the fire-flaming realm now, but his combat capability is close to that of an expert in the stabilization phase of the thunder-shocking realm. He has the thunder vein, and is born with divine power. In terms of pure strength, few people in the whole Jade Pool can be stronger than first senior brother. First senior brother mainly practices prairie burning sword storm and wind and thunder sword. At least in terms of pure strength, his strength can be said to be the peak of the fire-flaming realm. Li Tianlan was suddenly moved. Even Li Beitian and Wang Yuetong changed their expressions slightly. A super expert whose combat capability was close to the stabilization phase of the thunder-shocking realm was a core figure among the teachers of the Sky Academy. Why did such a person come to the Sky Academy as a freshman? There was no shortage of very old freshmen in the Sky Academy. In their class, there was a 35-year-old freshman who was the deputy director of the Special Operations Bureau of a subprovincial city in the south. These people who held public office came to the Sky Academy to be gilded. Su Chu did not hold any public office, but he was extremely strong. There was no need for such a person to be gilded. Is he really a servant? Let's go to class first. Li Tianlan thought silently for a while, but he couldn't figure out the main point. He shook his head and took the lead to the classroom. Tianlan. Tribulation's deep and hoarse voice suddenly sounded. A shadow suddenly appeared in the corridor. Before the shadow was completely formed, Tribulation had already switched places with the shadow and stood in front of Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was suddenly stunned. Looking at Tribulation, who looked normal, he raised his eyebrows and said, "Martial uncle, what's the matter? Come with me. I'll take you to see someone." Tribulation spoke slowly in a solemn tone. "Teacher Bai Yuming? But now it's the sniper class." A name came to Li Tianlan's mind, and then he became a little hesitant. "It's not her," Tribulation said indifferently. "It's Dongqing Qiuqi. Don't worry about the course. I've already asked for leave for you. The leave application approved by the headmaster has been in the hands of teacher Wang Tianqing." Li Tianlan was more confused. Dongqing Qiuqi just called him in the morning. The sister, who was now a member of the standing committee of Huating, didn't say anything about meeting him. Why did she suddenly come to the Sky Academy? He looked at the other members of the East Emperor Palace. Tribulation's eyes also fell on Wang Yuetong, and the others with Li Tianlan. "You," Tribulation said slowly. "Except for the little princess, everyone's leave application has been approved. I guess someone will come to you in a while." He paused for a moment before continuing. "Take care, everyone." Tribulation turned around and walked to the stairs. "Master Tribulation," Li Beitian shouted subconsciously with a puzzled look on his face. Tribulation had already gone downstairs without looking back. Li Tianlan exchanged a look with them and followed Tribulation downstairs. In the corridor, Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing looked at each other and then said, "It seems that none of us asked for leave, did we?" "Obviously we were asked for leave," Ning Qianqing said expressionlessly. "That means we don't have to go to class?" Li Tianlan clicked his tongue and said, "Why do I feel that something big is going to happen?" Wang Yuetong stood there quietly, deep in thought. A footstep hurried upstairs. A staff member of the teaching office in military uniform, about 40 years old, ran upstairs. He was slightly stunned when he saw Li Beitian and the others standing in the corridor in a daze. Li Beitian, Ning Qianqing, Yi Huayu, Yu Qingyan. The middle-aged man called several names and then said, "Are you all here?" "Yes," Li Beitian said calmly. The middle-aged man breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Well, your leave application has been approved by the headmaster. Come with me. Someone wants to see you." "Teacher, can you tell us who wants to see us?" Ning Qianqing frowned slightly and asked in a low voice. "It's Leader Bai of the actual combat lesson, and Leader Enchantress of the camouflage and lurking lesson." Bai Yuming and Enchantress? They were stunned again. "Teacher, what about our leave application?" Li Beitian asked casually. "It's been approved." The middle-aged man's smile remained unchanged. The headmaster personally approved it. "How long?" Li Beitian's eyes gradually sharpened and he asked closely. The middle-aged man lowered his eyelids and said calmly, "About 40 days. It had been less than a week since the Sky Academy officially started, and Zhuang Huayang had approved a leave application for 40 days. What was going on? "Teacher, we didn't ask for leave, and we didn't even know about it, but the school gave us a 40-day leave. Shouldn't they give us an explanation? This treatment is really high. I want to ask, who else has the same treatment as our East Emperor Palace?" Ning Qianqing took a deep breath and asked straightforwardly. The middle-aged man's smile remained unchanged. He hesitated a little and continued to answer with a smile. "In fact, all the 50 people in your class have been approved except for Wang Yuetong, including the freshman who has just arrived and several freshmen who are about to enter the school. Your leave is the same, about 40 days. It's just that the treatment is slightly different." He looked at Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing and said with a meaningful smile, "I can guarantee that your treatment is absolutely the best. Enjoy the next 40 days. Chapter 125. After getting out of the teaching building and getting on the school bus, Li Tianlan looked around and found that he had come to Zhuang Huayang's office again. The spring breeze was warm. The birds were singing and the flowers were fragrant. It seemed that only Zhuang Huayang's residence, a place with a bloody atmosphere like the Sky Academy, could be filled with flowers and fragrance all the year round. Obviously, Dongqing Qiuqi had chosen this place to meet. Li Tianlan, who had been silent all the way, looked at Tribulation's back and finally couldn't help asking, "Marshal uncle, what's going on? Why did the headmaster approve my leave slip?" "It's not just you." Tribulation paused and let Li Tianlan walk side by side with him. He said slowly, "Guyulan, Li Beitian, Ning Qianqing, Lu Dongyu, Su Mai Fan Haoyu, these people must have gotten leave slips by now." "Why?" Li Tianlan subconsciously felt a little creepy. These people mentioned by Tribulation were all the best in this year's Sky Academy. They might be in different realms, but none of their real combat capability was lower than the Fire Flaming realm. So many people were inexplicably on leave at the same time. What on earth did the Sky Academy want to do? "I can't say." Tribulation shook his head. "I signed a confidentiality agreement. You'll know when the time comes." Li Tianlan nodded. Many top-secret actions of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State had to be signed in advance, and only the planners and main participants of the action were qualified to sign it. It was a kind of status, but it was more of a responsibility. Since it was a top-secret action, those who signed the confidentiality agreement must keep their mouths shut. Once the news was leaked, everyone would be implicated, and no one could escape. As the most hidden but also the sharpest sword of the country in times of peace, the special warfare system was often not bound by the law. But once all kinds of constraints were formed, it was often high pressure, like this time. The headmaster is back? Li Tianlan asked softly. Yes. Tribulation nodded and said in a hoarse voice. He just came back this morning. Li Tianlan didn't say more, but he already knew in his heart that Zhuang Huayang made such an unreasonable decision as soon as he came back. It could only mean that Yuzhou was not as peaceful as it seemed these days, at least far more than the changes of several important positions in the Sky Academy. In this game, the Wang family of Beihai, the Giant Group, and Sai City all gained something. As for Samsara, the one who ignited this conflict, and the academic faction who led this trade, they obviously had their own demands. A lot of things were going on behind the scenes in an orderly manner. Today's incident might just be the first inkling, and a bigger storm was obviously still behind. Storm. Li Tianlan smiled inwardly. In the short time since he came to Huading, he had heard too many words such as the coming storm, and the troubled times. As time went by, with the ups and downs of the general trend, the so-called storm finally came. One after another, they passed the unique flower beds and pools in the Sky Academy, entered the villa, and went straight to the headmaster's office. In the office, Zhuang Huayang, who had just returned to the Sky Academy, did not look tired at all. He was glowing and in high spirits. It seemed that both his spirit and mood were excellent. When Li Tianlan came in, Zhuang Huayang was bending over to water the only pot of devil's ivy in the office. A man and a woman were sitting on the sofa in the reception area. The woman was gentle and soft, and the man was rough and bold. For Li Tianlan, they were all acquaintances. Tianlan, here you are. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Zhuang Huayang greeted them with a smile. Then his eyes fell on the reception area, and he said with a smile, General Thunder, Secretary Dongqing, the person you are waiting for is here. In the reception area, Thunder God, who was supposed to spend most of his time with Dongqing Wudi, stood up with a laugh and said in a heroic tone, Boy, come on, Qiu Qi and I have brought you a good thing this time. Li Tianlan was confused. He looked at Zhuang Huayang and Tribulation. Seeing that neither of them said anything, he walked to the reception area. The gentle Dongqing Qiuqi nodded to Li Tianlan with a smile, and said in a calm and elegant tone, I came here suddenly. The old master asked me to bring you a good thing, and I must give it to you in person, so I came to have a look. Li Tianlan did not ask what it was. He nodded and said solemnly, Thank the old master for me. Boy, you even need Qiuqi to help you say thank you? You are so heartless. Don't you have the old master's phone number? How hard can it be to call him later and say thank you? The old master didn't say it out loud these days, but you don't know how much he wants you to call him. Thunder God took out a long silver box from his feet and put it on the table. He scolded with a smile. The old master told us in private that he doesn't expect much now. First, he hopes that you and Rushi can go home to see him together. Second, he hopes that you can get married early and give him a great-grandson in a few years. No matter how powerful the old man used to be, he will always be worried and miss the younger generation in the family when they are outside. Boy, you should call the old master when you have nothing to do. Even if you just say a few words, the old man will be happy. Dongqing Qiuqi looked at Li Tianlan subconsciously. She was very clear about the engagement between Li Tianlan and her sister, but she did not expect that Grandpa would attach so much importance to this promise made many years ago in Li Tianlan. The younger generation in the family. Listening to these words, she was afraid that in Grandpa's eyes, Li Tianlan was more than just his grandson-in-law. His status was even more important than her, his granddaughter. Li Tianlan touched his nose with a wry smile. These words sounded really weird. He could not refute, let alone answer, so he simply changed the topic. He pointed to the box in front of him and asked curiously, What is this? Click. Thunder God opened the mechanism of the box, turned the box to Li Tianlan, and said with a smile, See for yourself. Li Tianlan squatted down casually and touched the box. Then he was stunned. He thought it was just an ordinary metal box, but it felt extremely strange when he touched it. It was neither gold nor wood, and seemed to be some special military material. Even a box was like this, which showed that the thing in the box was absolutely worthy of Thunder God's title of good stuff. He took a deep breath, opened the box, and saw the thing in the box. His pupils contracted instantly. A silver heavy sniper rifle nearly 2 meters long was lying quietly in the box, with a deep and mysterious light. The stock, the scope, the muzzle. The silver heavy sniper rifle had smooth lines and a simple and unadorned design. But lying quietly in the box, it gave people a feeling of extreme coldness and violence. A row of bullets was neatly arranged under the box. The bullets were long and narrow, engraved with some simple patterns. There were about 20 bullets in total. Boy, pick it up and have a try. What do you think? Thunder God squinted at the silver sniper rifle in the box, and his eyes were equally hot. This, Li Tianlan hesitated. He did not know how precious this gun was, but he could instinctively sense that this gun was different. The kind of deep silver that was not dazzling, on the contrary, the bullets with complicated patterns, and the gun body that seemed to be natural, and even had no artificial traces. All these showed that this gun was absolutely extraordinary. How could it be a good thing? It was simply a treasure. Li Tianlan wanted to refuse such a precious good thing, but looking at the sniper rifle in front of him, he really could not bear to give it up. Even if his shooting skills were not good now, this heavy sniper rifle was extremely attractive to him. If he did not want such a heavy sniper rifle, he would not be wronged even if he was struck by lightning. Li Tianlan struggled for a while, but finally, he could not resist the temptation. He reached out and grabbed the heavy sniper rifle in the box. As soon as the sniper rifle was in his hand, Li Tianlan's palm suddenly sank. This large sniper rifle, nearly 2 meters long, was also unexpectedly heavy. Roughly estimating, it weighed at least 25 kilograms. Li Tianlan held the gun and looked at it silently. The more he looked, the more he loved it. The sense of security when holding the gun in his hand, the cold and violent momentum of the gun body, and everything about it were extremely attractive to him, as if it were tailor-made for him. This is the heavenly rainbow that Dongqing clan recently reported to the army ministry. It is said that when Samsara destroyed Night Spirit, Dongqing clan lent Samsara 10 heavenly rainbows. Is this it? Zhuang Huayang and Tribulation came over at the same time. Looking at the really powerful and violent heavy sniper rifle in Li Tianlan's hand, the old headmaster's eyes were filled with sincere admiration. No. Thunder God shook his head. Looking at Li Tianlan standing with a gun, he only felt that the two were an extraordinary match. The sharpness under Li Tianlan's calmness, and the violence under the simplicity of the heavy sniper rifle complemented each other. He smiled and said calmly, "This is Sky Attack, which can be said to be a combination of Mad Shot and Heavenly Rainbow. It is the latest discovery of Dongqing clan, and the final experiment was completed a week ago. Although Sky Attack is not the only one, it can't be mass-produced. At present, the only Sky Attack in the entire Dongqing clan is in Tianlan's hand." This time, not to mention Zhuang Huayang and Dongqing Qiuqi, even the eyes of Tribulation changed slightly. The only Sky Attack in the Dongqing clan was given to Li Tianlan. This kind of affection was completely an attitude of being willing to do everything for him. Li Tianlan was also stunned. Looking at the heavy sniper rifle in his hand, which he liked from the bottom of his heart, he felt a little heavy for no reason. "General Lei, can you tell me the actual combat data of Sky Attack?" Zhuang Huayang hesitated and asked with a dignified look. Dongqing clan was known as a military giant. They had made great achievements in some large-scale military projects in Zhongzhou State, but they did not have much in-depth research in the field of firearms before. Dongqing clan focused on firearms about 15 years ago. Mad Shot came out 9 years ago and amazed the dark world. Recently, Heavenly Rainbow played a significant role in the destruction of the Night Spirit organization by Samsara. So how terrifying would the only Sky Attack be? The accurate range is 5,000 meters, and the maximum range can reach 5,500 meters. It is powerful and fast. Within 3,000 meters, even an expert of the thunder-shocking realm will be seriously injured in an instant if the Sky Attack is launched with all its strength. If it hits a vital part, it will definitely die. In this action, Tianlan has the Sky Attack in his hand, so there should not be too much danger. Within 3,000 meters, he could kill an expert of the thunder-shocking realm with one shot. Zhuang Huayang's face suddenly changed. What did 3,000 meters mean? This distance was not a distance that could be closed in an instant, even for an expert of the invincible realm. Within this distance, if a master who was proficient in sniping aimed at him, 3,000 meters was a natural moat that could determine life and death. A gun that could target an expert of the thunder-shocking realm. How many such heavy sniper rifles could there be in the whole dark world? In addition to the 12 murderous weapons, there were less than 5 kinds of firearms that could achieve such lethality in the dark world. And all of them could not be mass-produced. But the sky attack could not be mass-produced. What did this mean? The most important thing was that Dongqing Hongguang did not give the only sky attack to Dongqing Rushi, but gave it to Li Tianlan. The corner of Zhuang Huayang's mouth twitched, and he was extremely confused for a moment. Uncle Thunder, I can't. Li Tianlan's face also changed. He was rudely interrupted by Thunder God when he just said a few words. He stared at Li Tianlan with a pair of bull eyes and said in a rude tone, "What can't you do? We can't change what the old master has decided. This sky attack is yours, and no one can take it away." He paused and continued, "Don't you have a vacation? I will also be in the Sky Academy during these 40 days. Tribulation is responsible for improving your combat capability, and I am responsible for improving your marksmanship. Boy, this is the real special training. You have to be mentally prepared." Li Tianlan tightly held the heavy sniper rifle in his hand, and his heart was filled with mixed feelings. "Call the old master for me." "No, I'll call him later." He was silent for a while, and then he said in a low voice. Thunder God smiled meaningfully and said softly, "The old master has only one request for you." Li Tianlan nodded seriously, and waited for Thunder God to continue. Thunder God glanced at him and continued, "After this special training, the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy will have a top-secret operation. You have the Sky Attack. At that time, the old master hopes that you can protect Rushi well and protect her. As a man, you should protect your family. Boy, do you dare to make this promise?" Chapter 126. Holding the only sky attack of the Dongqing clan, Li Tianlan had no reason or position to refuse the promise that Thunder God asked him to make. But Thunder God's words were so annoying that it was obvious that he did it deliberately. Protecting his family. Obviously, in the eyes of the whole Dongqing clan, Dongqing Rushi, who had never met him, was already his wife, so he used the word family. In other words, whether it was to protect the country or to protect his comrades, Li Tianlan could agree without hesitation. But in the face of Thunder God's ambiguous words, Li Tianlan opened his mouth several times, but he couldn't give a clear answer. He kept the promise in his heart, held the sky attack in his hand, and quietly changed the topic. The top-secret action of the two academies refers to. There was a flash of helplessness in Thunder God's eyes, but he didn't continue to embarrass him. During the year when Li Tianlan was in the desert, he had always been with Li Tianlan, sent him there and sent him back. The two had been together for a long time. And Thunder God also had a deep understanding of Li Tianlan's character. Not to mention the importance of the sky attack in front of him, which could shoot an expert of the thunder-shocking realm. Even if there was nothing, if Dongqing Rushi was in danger, Li Tianlan would not stand idly by just because of the word Dongqing. As for asking him to admit Dongqing Rushi's identity, it was impossible for a while. He didn't get an answer from the simple test, so he didn't say more. He just turned his eyes to Zhuang Huayang and said, "You have to ask the headmaster about this. I only know it's a top-secret action, but I don't know about the action itself." Li Tianlan looked at Zhuang Huayang. Zhuang Huayang shook his head without surprise and said blandly, "This action is very secretive. Even if a little information is leaked, the consequences will be unimaginable, so we signed a confidentiality agreement. Not everyone in the decision-making committee knows the specific action, not to mention the Sky Academy. I can't tell you anything now. When the time comes, you will naturally know." Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed. The action was not completely transparent in the decision-making committee, so it could be imagined how top-secret it was. It was just an action of two special warfare students. Was it really necessary for the big shots to be so cautious? Or could it be that there were some other inside stories? Don't think too much. Zhuang Huayang looked at Li Tianlan and said in a calm tone, "The most important task for you now is to improve your strength. After 40 days of devilish special training, improve as much as you can. Tianlan, let me remind you that if you want to widen the gap between you and the others in credits, this is the best opportunity. Every student who participates in this action will have 100 credits, and those who perform well in the action will be rewarded with additional credits. There is no cap, so use these 40 days to improve your credits as soon as possible. This is the most important thing." Li Tianlan nodded. He slowly put the sky attack back into the box and carried it on his back. The sky attack was extremely heavy. Including the box, it weighed about 70 to 80 kilograms. Only a freak like Li Tianlan, who kept a human emperor weighing more than 50 kilograms in his sleeve all day long, could treat it as nothing. If it were someone else, this weight would probably be a big burden for most experts below the thunder-shocking realm. "My classmates." He carried the sky attack on his back and continued to ask. "They have someone to guide them to complete the special training. The Enchantress by Yuming Guyunxia Qingku. All of them will not be idle. But compared with you, who have 2 mentors to guide them, their lives will definitely be better." Zhuang Huayang said indifferently, "You have a day off today. Report here at this time tomorrow. Adjust your state. The special training will start tomorrow. In the next 40 days, I'm afraid you won't be able to relax. Put aside your plans for today." Tribulation stood beside Zhuang Huayang and said, "Everything should be done in moderation. Today is a relaxation." "Okay." Li Tianlan smiled, but his thoughts were getting more and more out of control. This inexplicable 40-day vacation was called a vacation, but in fact it was a special training with a more intense pace. Obviously, there was still a big gap between their strength and the upcoming action. That was why the academy had mobilized masters to concentrate special training on the most outstanding freshmen, in an attempt to maximize their combat capability in the shortest time possible. What was the top secret action? Li Tianlan carried the sky attack on his back and walked out of the villa silently, thinking about this question all the way. The afternoon sun shone quietly on the academy's road, bright and fresh. Li Tianlan walked along the road unconsciously, but his mind had already flown to other places. A phone suddenly rang. Li Tianlan, who was absent-minded, suddenly came to his senses. He took out his mobile phone and looked at the number. His eyes narrowed subconsciously. He picked up the phone and said hello in an indifferent tone. "Young Master Li, I'm at the Sky Academy." On the phone, Lu Shuyuan's respectful voice came through the phone, sounding extremely humble. "I know." Li Tianlan smiled and said in a calm voice, which made it impossible to guess his inner thoughts. "Congratulations, Deputy Director Lu. Is there anything you need me to do, young Master Li?" Lu Shuyuan thought for a moment and asked straightforwardly. He couldn't guess Li Tianlan's thoughts, so he simply didn't bother to guess. This phone call was not to express loyalty. Given the actual relationship between them, Li Tianlan would only believe that the Lu family would be loyal to Li Tianlan if he was stupid. Moreover, it was not loyalty that maintained their subordination relationship. The fate of the Lu family was in his hands. No matter how much hatred and unwillingness the Lu family had in their hearts, as long as they wanted to survive, they had to accept the fate of being manipulated by Li Tianlan. Both sides were well aware of this. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. He said thoughtfully, "Have you received any news or rumors about this top-secret action of the Sky Academy?" "No." Lu Shuyuan said honestly. "It seems that even Gu Yunxia doesn't know much about this matter, and there was no rumor circulating in Huiting beforehand. Young Master Li, should I inquire about it?" Li Tianlan thought about it seriously, but finally shook his head and said, "No need, in case there are more complications." He had been selected for the top-secret action of the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy, so there was no room for refusal. In the Sky Academy, which had a strong military atmosphere, this was equivalent to an order from above. Military orders were like mountains, and personal advance and retreat were not worth mentioning under military orders. Therefore, Li Tianlan would know about this matter sooner or later. If he let Lu Shuyuan inquire about it, it would be bad if there were any changes, not to mention whether he could find out anything. The The Lu family was the most hidden chess piece in his hand at present. If it was exposed, it would do him no good. Okay. Lu Xiuyuan simply responded. How could he really want to find out the inside story of this top-secret action? However, since Li Tianlan asked about it, he should express an attitude no matter what. From the bottom of his heart, Lu Xiuyuan hoped that Li Tianlan would order the Lu family to do as little as possible. Because from his point of view, once the Lu family carried out the order given to the Lu family, it would certainly go against its own surface position. How dangerous it was and how careful it needed to be was impossible for those who were not involved to understand. Anything else? Li Tianlan continued to ask, holding the phone. Here's the thing. On the phone, Lu Xiuyuan hesitated for a moment and reported in full detail. Young Master Li, a large number of elites of Jiangnan society have left Jiangnan. Their leader, Lu Shuanghua, is still in Huiting and has no intention of leaving. I think they probably want to increase their investment in Huiting. What should we do? Jiangnan Society. This was the largest intelligence agency in southern Zhongzhou State, and Lu Shuanghua was one of the intelligence giants in Zhongzhou State. Perhaps in Huiting, the power of Jiangnan Society was not as powerful as that of the curtain. But in the entire southern Zhongzhou State, the curtain could not compare with Jiangnan Society in terms of scale and various hidden channels. Lu Shuanghua, the current leader of Jiangnan Society, used to be a senior intelligence officer of the Prince Group. For various reasons, he broke with the Prince Group and joined the Wang family of Beihai for self-protection under the guidance of Great Master Wu Wei. In a few years, he built Jiangnan Society into the largest intelligence organization in southern Zhongzhou State. How could ordinary people compare with such skills? Lu Shuanghua personally led the army and increased Jiangnan Society's intelligence investment in Huiting. The first to be hit was definitely the curtain, the largest local intelligence organization in Huiting. This was the real first to bear the brunt. Faced with the pressure from Jiangnan Society, how should the curtain deal with it? This was the purpose of Lu Xiuyuan's call. The news that Wang Yuetong, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, had lived with Li Tianlan had spread throughout the Sky Academy. Lu Xiuyuan wanted to know Li Tianlan's position in the face of the intelligence agency of the Wang family of Beihai. Do you need to ask me about this? Li Tianlan frowned. If I were not here, how would you deal with Jiangnan Society? Lu Xiuyuan was silent for a while. He seemed to understand what Li Tianlan meant, but he still did not dare to make a decision without hearing Li Tianlan's clear statement. He took a deep breath and cautiously said, if it were before, the curtain would definitely try its best to obstruct the development of Jiangnan Society in Huiting, even at the cost of waging war in secret. From the standpoint of the Lu family, this was the most appropriate thing for them to do. Even if they did not do it, Kunlun City would probably give them hints in this regard. But from the standpoint of Li Tianlan, who knew if he would have any other views, Lu Xiuyuan held the phone and waited silently. Li Tianlan was silent for about a minute, and then hung up the phone without saying a word. Most of the time, silence was often the best answer. Lu Xiuyuan's scalp went numb. During that nearly minute of silence, Li Tianlan's breathing was steady. He could not hear the slightest hesitation in his voice, only an almost unfathomable calmness. Was he an ambitious man? Lu Xiuyuan smiled bitterly, picked up the phone again, and began to call the curtain. Almost as soon as Li Tianlan hung up the phone with Lu Xiuyuan, his cell phone rang again. Looking at Wang Yuetong's phone on the screen, Li Tianlan smiled and picked up the phone again. Senior brother, where are you? Wang Yuetong's clear voice came from the microphone, and she did not sound unhappy. I'm on my way back to the dormitory. Where are you? Li Tianlan lit a cigarette and asked, are you angry that the academy did not let you participate in this matter? No. Wang Yuetong paused and her voice became low. She whispered, it's not the academy's idea. It should be my family's idea. This operation is mysterious, and it may be dangerous. His Majesty the Sword Emperor still loves you very much. This is to protect you, Li Tianlan said with a casual smile, without thinking too much. This is not protection. On the phone, Wang Yuetong said softly, and then became silent again, as if she wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Li Tianlan waited quietly. It was obvious that Wang Yuetong called to say something to him, but she did not know how to say it. Did I finally embarrass her? Li Tianlan sighed in his heart, but he did not show it on the surface. My brother. Wang Yuetong hesitated for a long time, and then said softly, my brother and several other young people from the Wang family of Beihai will also participate in this operation. In addition, Gu Hongguang, the young master of Kunlun City, is said to have left Kunlun City. Senior brother, be careful on this trip. She paused, and then said in a serious tone, be careful. The hair all over Li Tianlan's body stood up slightly, and he was silent. Wang Yuetong said be careful twice in a row. Perhaps only she knew who she was talking about. Wang Shengxiao, Gu Hongguang. These two people, who always had a high status in the younger generation, and were known as the Young Heavenly Sons, would also participate in this operation. What did this mean? And the most thought-provoking thing was that when the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State let his son participate in the operation, he excluded his daughter. What did this mean? The Sky Academy already knew that Wang Yuetong was living with him, and so did Wang Xiaoyao. How could Wang Tianzong not know? Excluding Wang Yuetong from the operation was not to protect her. Then he thought of Wang Yuetong's words of be careful. Li Tianlan smiled, and his eyes were deep. He was not the only one who did not want to embarrass Wang Yuetong. The Wang family of Beihai did not want to either. Vaguely, he seemed to understand the deep meaning of Wang Yuetong's deliberate exclusion in this operation. It's okay. Li Tianlan said softly, and his eyes became calmer. On the phone, Wang Yuetong answered obediently and continued. I heard that after this operation, the top 10 experts of the young generation will be re-ranked. Come on, senior brother. Li Tianlan took a deep drag on the cigarette, and did not speak. The top secret operation of the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy, plus Wang Shengxiao and Gu Hongguang, the top 10 experts of the young generation were almost all gathered this time. Would this top-secret operation be the beginning of the official killing and struggle of the young generation of Zhongzhou State? Zhongzhou State produced a heavenly sun every 500 years. The beginning of the competition of the heavenly suns? Li Tianlan's eyes gradually showed a glimmer of light, and he chuckled and said, wait for me to come back. Wang Yuetong also smiled and said softly, I've already left the Sky Academy, and I'm the only one in the class, so I'm on leave. I just called Senior Yu. I'll wait for you in the East Emperor Palace. Wait for my man to amaze the world. She paused and whispered with a smile. Senior brother, if you do well, I'll reward you. Li Tianlan's heart was boiling for no reason, and he asked directly, what reward? Wang Yuetong chuckled. Through the phone, Li Tianlan seemed to be able to imagine the little princess's pretty face blushing and biting her lips. If you do well, I'll let you play with your sister-in-law. Do you like this reward, brother-in-law? Chapter 127. Updated late. This chapter is yesterday's, and there are 2 chapters to be released before 12 o'clock today. Before the storm, silence filled the sky. Whether it was the Sky Academy, the Deep Sea Academy, or Zhongzhou State, they all suddenly became calm. The friction between the Big Six seemed to have completely ceased, and everything became calm and tranquil. Li Tianlan's devil special training began in a calm atmosphere, without any buffer and gradual progress. Thunder God was responsible for improving his marksmanship, while Tribulation was responsible for improving his combat strength. From the very beginning, the almost crazy training intensity had tightened Li Tianlan's body to the limit. 15 hours of training a day, 5 hours to practice marksmanship, 2 hours to practice driving, and the rest of the time, Li Tianlan's task was to follow Tribulation to practice the Buddhist incantation of 9 words. 1 hour to eat every day, 3 hours to meditate, 2 hours to rest. The remaining 3 hours were for actual combat. There were no rules in the actual combat. Tribulation, who suppressed his strength to the chi-controlling realm, Thunder God, who suppressed his strength to the ice-condensing realm, and the 3 fought together. Li Tianlan had almost no time to be idle 24 hours a day, practicing marksmanship, practicing the Buddhist incantation of 9 words, meditating, fighting, and fighting. Zhuang Huayang personally drew a remote training ground for the three of them, and a few single beds were placed in the warehouse of the training ground as resting places. Most of the time, Li Tianlan kept repeating the boring but substantial training. By the time the first week passed, Li Tianlan, who was proficient in all kinds of firearms, could hit the target with every shot. At the same time, he drove the car to the limit. His realm at the peak of the chi-controlling realm became more and more stable. The second week, Li Tianlan could already drive the car at the fastest speed to bypass the obstacles specially set by Thunder God, and reach the finish line within the specified time. At the same time, he began to practice the sniper rifle. In the third week, the vehicle training was removed, and the daily rest time was changed from 2 hours to 1 hour. The extra 2 hours were all added to the actual combat training. Li Tianlan officially practiced the sky attack in the fourth week. Li Tianlan used ordinary bullets for the 2 shots of the sky attack, but he still successfully broke the moving target 2 kilometers away. In the actual combat training that day, Li Tianlan was knocked out by Tribulation, who was also in the chi-controlling realm. Then he woke up with cold water and continued to train. Li Tianlan finally realized the horror of the sky attack, the treasure of the Dongqing clan. He originally thought that the sky attack was just like other sniper rifles, but when he really shot it, he realized that if he didn't have the wind and thunder veins, he wouldn't even be able to pull the trigger when he was in the chi-controlling realm. This kind of heavy sniper rifle could kill an expert of the thunder-shocking realm with 1 shot. The internal design of the sky attack was exquisite and complicated. It was different from the design ideas of any other gun. It could be said that the pursuit of lethality and destructive power had reached the real extreme. In particular, the design of the internal firing pin was not made of high-temperature resistant and super-hard tungsten steel, but of a special material discovered by the Dongqing clan in recent years. This was also one of the key reasons why pulling the sky attack required a great deal of strength and raised the power of the gun to such a level. With Li Tianlan's current physical strength, firing 5 shots in a row was enough to exhaust his physical strength. If he didn't have the thunder veins, he couldn't pull the trigger even if he had a sky attack under the fire-flaming realm. So from the fourth week, Li Tianlan fought with Tribulation or Thunder God in a weak state every time. He became quieter and quieter, but his attacks became fiercer and fiercer. Tribulation could suppress Li Tianlan by suppressing his strength to the chi-controlling realm, but he felt more and more pressure. Thunder God, who was originally an expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm, became a little frightened in the actual combat. From the fourth week, he no longer suppressed his strength to the ice-condensing realm, but raised it to the fire-flaming realm. Li Tianlan didn't express any opinion. He just attacked wildly, blindly. His attacks became more and more crazy, and his every move was full of killing intent and sword intent, incisively and vividly. After a week of crazy, sleepless special training, Li Tianlan was transforming almost every day, becoming sharper and sharper. Now he looked like a young Tribulation, but his every move was more magnificent than Tribulation's. The sword intent hidden deep in his heart was being developed little by little, like a famous sword that had been dusty for a long time, but still had world-shaking sharpness. It was being unsheathed little by little, and was about to shine in the world. Continuous actual combat, non-stop fighting. Li Tianlan vaguely seemed to have a tendency to break through the peak of the chi-controlling realm and go straight to the fulfillment. His strength was getting stronger and stronger. In the continuous training day after day, his potential was uncontrollably squeezed. In just a month, his whole spirit was completely soaring, and every move he made had a kind of unparalleled momentum. More than half of the fourth week had passed. When Thunder God finally realized that the strength of the stabilization phase of the fire-flaming realm was not enough to suppress Li Tianlan, he directly raised his strength to the peak of the fire-flaming realm without hesitation. Once again, Li Tianlan was knocked out. Can you still do it? Tribulation, who looked colder than anyone else, finally opened his mouth. There was a trace of imperceptible worry in his low and hoarse voice. He could be indifferent to anyone, but in the whole world, there were only 2 people that Tribulation cared about most. One was his sister, Situ Tsungyue, and the other was Li Tianlan. After a month of special training, how could he not see Li Tianlan's current state? Whether it was spirit or body, Li Tianlan had now completely reached the limit. If he continued, he might go further, but it might also damage his foundation. At this critical step, even tribulation hesitated. During this month, Li Tianlan's spirit was almost always in a state of tension, and his body was constantly training under high pressure. Almost every day, his physical strength would be completely exhausted, and then he would use a few hours of meditation and sleep to recover. Whether he could fully recover or not, he would continue to train the next day. During this month, tribulation did not hear a word of complaint from Li Tianlan, nor did he see the slightest frustration or retreat. His face and eyes had always been calm. The determination and ruthlessness behind that calmness even moved tribulation a little. In life, it was nothing to be cruel to others, but to be cruel to oneself was the real cruel. The only feeling that Li Tianlan gave tribulation now was that he was desperate. He could ignore his body and even his soul. As long as he could become stronger, he was willing to pay any price. He must do it. On the empty training ground, Thunder God looked at Li Tianlan, who was in a coma in front of him. His eyes were soft, but his tone was calm and firm. It's nothing to him. He could survive such a desperate environment. Now it's just a little more bitter and tired. Compared with the past, it's not worth mentioning at all. The past? Tribulation moved his body, and his eyes behind the silver mask fell on Thunder God with some doubts. Thunder God hesitated slightly. In his sight, Li Tianlan, who was in a coma on the ground, closed his eyes and looked relaxed and peaceful. Thunder God hesitated for a moment, and finally turned around, and came to tribulation. Have you ever experienced real despair? Thunder God handed Tribulation a cigarette and asked seriously. Tribulation's pupils contracted slightly. This sentence was ordinary, but in Tribulation's ears, it gave him a cold feeling. Tribulation took the cigarette, but did not light it. He remained silent. Tianlan has experienced it. Thunder God pointed at Li Tianlan and said softly, "This boy once entered the thunder-shocking realm and chose to recultivate. You know this, don't you?" Tribulation nodded and said thoughtfully, "The desert." "Yes, the desert." Thunder God nodded, took a deep drag on the cigarette, and said with a smile, "He could come out of the desert alive that year, so there is nothing that he can't bear." Tribulation didn't understand. After a moment of silence, he said softly, "The despair you mentioned, do you mean recultivate?" "No." Thunder God took a deep breath. After a long silence, he said softly, "It's real despair. Few people know about this. I can be regarded as a witness. I went to the border and brought him to the desert, and watched him get the heavenly king heart hidden deep in the desert." Tribulation remained silent, waiting for Thunder God to continue. The prison in the desert is known as one of the most complicated labyrinths in the dark world. You should know that, right? Thunder God suddenly asked. Tribulation nodded and said nothing. In fact, under the prison, there is a passage with the same internal structure as the labyrinth on the ground. Every intersection is exactly the same. Thunder God said flatly. It's just that the space of the underground labyrinth is a little smaller. Tribulation's eyes suddenly condensed, and he directly turned around and asked, "How small?" "Very small," Thunder God said calmly. "The space is less than half a meter up, down, left and right. It's hot and humid inside. If a person climbs in, he can barely lie on the ground. Not to mention standing up. Even if he slightly props up his arms, his back may be squeezed above. Can you imagine such a space?" Tribulation's breathing became faster for no reason. That underground passage is the heavenly king heart in the desert. Thunder God's tone became calmer and calmer. "You can't imagine it, neither can I. In that passage, you can only keep crawling in one posture. You can only move forward, not backward, or even change your posture. There is no sound, no light, no space, no food and water in the passage. You can only hear your own breathing and heartbeat. The whole world seems to be constantly squeezing you in the darkness. All you can do is crawl forward, and you must stay extremely calm, because that passage is a labyrinth. If you take a wrong step, you may be completely lost in the dark. Being lost means death. In that kind of environment, let alone ordinary people, even if we go in, how long can we persist? Absolute depression, absolute darkness, that is real despair. I don't know about you, but I think if I were to go in, I wouldn't even be able to hold on for half a day before going completely crazy. The darkness and oppression aren't scary, but the demons in one's heart are the most terrifying. And Tianlong has experienced all that I said. It was in the passage where he could only keep one posture, in the passage where there was only darkness and depression. He went in from the entrance and came out from the exit for 3 days. He didn't die or go crazy. After experiencing real despair, Tianlong can be said to have cut off all the inner demons. How many experts of the invincible realm can achieve this kind of absolute concentration and condensed willpower, not to mention those in the thundershocking realm? This is Tianlong's heavenly king heart. It may not have other effects as the real heavenly king heart, but in terms of willpower, it is even better. I dare not say anything else, but I am sure that Tianlong is absolutely indestructible in terms of willpower. A drop of sweat flowed down Tribulation's temple. He stood there motionless. Thunder God's words sounded like nothing, but if you really put yourself in that kind of environment, that kind of despair was enough to drive anyone completely crazy. Chapter 128. The special training was still going on. Li Tianlong didn't say stop, so Tribulation and Thunder God didn't either. Their requirements were getting stricter and stricter. In actual combat, they even began to work together to target Li Tianlong at the same time. Tribulation mainly attacked. Thunder God assisted. One was a cold and treacherous super assassin. The other was a valiant general of Zhongzhou state. Li Tianlong was knocked unconscious countless times and got up again and again. In the last few days, the three of them even had more than 8 hours of actual combat every day. Even Tribulation and Thunder God couldn't bear the intensity of such a fierce battle. But Li Tianlong was always in high spirits. His momentum was getting crazier and crazier, and the almost violent sharpness kept flying between his eyes. In this state, Li Tianlong's every move was indescribably dangerous and dazzling. Was it bitter? Not at all. It was more bitter than when he ate stinky porridge at the border and covered himself with a damp and moldy quilt during the rainy season. It was more bitter than when he stood in front of nearly 1,000 tombstones behind the border camp and faced countless elites of the Li family who didn't have a good end. It was also more bitter than when he got along with the veterans at the border who were willing to stay with their grandfather without complaint or regret, even though there was no hope. That was the real bitterness, which made people desperate and numb. Thunder God asked Tribulation if he had ever experienced real despair. In fact, for Li Tianlong, he was not really desperate in the dark and depressing maze under the desert. It was just an obstacle that he had to conquer in his life. After he cut off all the inner demons, he would get what he wanted. His life at the border from childhood to adulthood was the real despair with no future. Now that he was in the Sky Academy, he had a group of good teachers and helpful friends, East Emperor Palace, and the most beautiful woman. He could see with his own eyes the magnificence of the flourishing age of Zhongzhou state. And he could see with his own eyes the slow germination of something called hope. Bitter? What right did he have to say bitter? Everything he had experienced. It was meaningful. It was worth it. What was so bitter about it? Time entered June unhurriedly. The weather gradually became hot. Under the scorching sun, when Thunder God, who had suppressed his strength to the peak of the fire-flaming realm, was once again dazed by Li Tianlong's shadow, this fierce general next to Dongqing Wudi finally laughed and scolded in exasperation. Stop fighting, damn it. What's the point of fighting? We can't even touch him. It's boring. He turned to look at Tribulation, who was watching the battle silently, and suddenly said, "Do you want to teach your disciple a lesson? How much of your teachings does his current shadow have?" Tribulation did not move, but a smile flashed in his eyes. He said calmly, "I was just like this when I was in the chi-controlling realm." Thunder God shook his head and lamented, "The exquisite bone, huh? This thing's comprehension ability is truly abnormal. The key is that you're not an assassin yet. You're more inclined towards the offensive path. With these two abnormal shadows, there's no way to play." What he said was half true, but not exaggerated. With Thunder God's strength, Even if he suppressed his strength to the peak of the fire-flaming realm, once he fought, he would still have the fighting style and experience of the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. If he went all out, it would not be a big problem to deal with the current Li Tianlan. But the actual combat was different from a life-and-death fight. In the absence of some special means, Li Tianlan could move between the two shadows so flexibly that even Thunder God had a headache dealing with him. Especially 2 days ago, when Li Tianlan's two shadows could perfectly imitate his movements. Thunder God's feeling became more and more obvious. It was not that he could not beat Li Tianlan, but he felt aggrieved. Well, then don't fight. Li Tianlan smiled, took out a cigarette and handed it to Thunder God. Both Tribulation and Thunder God were stunned and looked at Li Tianlan at the same time. Li Tianlan's tone was calm and he whispered, "It's almost time. I want to try to break through." Enter the ice-condensing realm? Thunder God looked incredulous. In 40 days, he entered the ice-condensing realm from the peak of the chi-controlling realm. This kind of speed made people speechless. No, it's the fulfillment of the chi-controlling realm. Li Tianlan shook his head. After more than 40 days of crazy training, his realm had been advancing, but it was not obvious. Now his feet were almost completely out of the peak of the chi-controlling realm, only half a step away from the fulfillment of the chi-controlling realm. In the next few days, he needed to adjust his state and make this step completely. His vacation was coming to an end. In the next few days, if he could not break through, no matter how much actual combat he practiced, the effect would not be great. Then go and have a try. Tribulation nodded calmly, and pointed to the direction of the warehouse on the training ground. Li Tianlan nodded and entered the warehouse with the heavy sky attack on his back. Without any delay, he directly sat down and began to meditate. After more than 30 days of crazy training and actual combat, Tribulation and Thunder God attacked his weaknesses again and again. Li Tianlan might not even know how much he had gained. If he could successfully break through this meditation, he might be able to fight more actively against Thunder God, who suppressed his strength to the peak of the fire-flaming realm. Li Tianlan thought silently. Countless details of the past month flowed in his mind one by one. The 24 moves of sword from Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun. The Invincible Manual, the Buddhist incantation of 9 words. His spirit was completely focused. His mind was clear, and all kinds of pictures appeared more and more clearly. The almost crazy sword intent and killing intent surrounded his whole body. In the warehouse, the cold killing intent filled every corner in an instant. Li Tianlan became quieter. Time went by. His aura was getting stronger and stronger, but the sword intent and killing intent had completely disappeared. Only a strong momentum reverberated in the warehouse, surging endlessly. 2 hours. 3 hours. 5 hours. Li Tianlan's momentum had been rising slowly, but firmly without interruption. Thunder God and Tribulation came and went, standing outside the door, quietly guarding the warehouse. 6 hours. Li Tianlan's rising momentum finally stopped when it reached a certain peak. He took a deep breath, frowned slightly and opened his eyes. Before he had time to sort out what he had gained from this meditation, a sigh had sounded in front of him. Li Tianlan raised his head abruptly. In his sight, a middle-aged figure with a kind of carefree and unrestrained aura was standing quietly in front of him. He was smiling, but his eyes were extremely complicated. The middle-aged man in a white suit was about 50 years old, looking clean and elegant. He was standing in front of Li Tianlan, but in Li Tianlan's perception he seemed not to exist, ethereal and illusory. Li Tianlan's pupils suddenly contracted. The man was standing in front of him, but before he opened his eyes, he didn't notice his existence at all. How did he come? How long did he stay here? Li Tianlan's heart shook violently, and then he calmed down. He looked calmly at the middle-aged man who suddenly appeared in front of him, and said in a calm tone, "You are?" The middle-aged man didn't seem surprised by Li Tianlan's calm performance, or maybe he didn't care about it at all. He just looked at Li Tianlan seriously, his eyes in a trance, and his smile was a little bitter. "According to seniority, you should call me third uncle." Li Tianlan didn't speak, but his eyes gradually became as sharp as a sword. The middle-aged man continued to explain, "Wang Tianzong is the eldest, your father is the second and I'm the third." He paused, laughed at himself and said in a trance, "Now I don't know if my eldest brother will recognize me, or if my second brother will recognize me. As for me, Tianlan, will you recognize me? Who are you?" Li Tianlan's expression didn't change at all. His breath was slowly converging, and he became deep and silent. "I'm Lin Fengting." The middle-aged man looked at Li Tianlan softly and said softly, "Tianlan, I have a deep relationship with the Li family, or Zhuanyuantai. A peerless expert who could sneak into the warehouse without being noticed by tribulation outside. His surname was Lin, and he had a deep relationship with Zhuanyuantai." Li Tianlan's mind flashed, and he thought of a name that had long disappeared in the long river of history. His face also became solemn. "Descendants of my ancestors. My ancestors did establish Zhuanyuantai. For hundreds of years, although the Lin family is no longer in Zhongzhou state, they have connections with the Wang family of Beihai and the successor of Zhuanyuantai, the Li family. In my generation, when I was in the Wang family of Beihai, Wang Tianzong, your father, and I became sworn brothers in the peach garden of Mount Dibing. It was I who proposed it." Lin Fengting, who suddenly appeared in front of Li Tianlan, had a more complicated look in his eyes. "Sworn brothers in the peach garden?" Li Tianlan hid all his inner thoughts and said with a smile. However, Lin Fengting's appearance was too sudden, so even if he tried to hide it, there was still an imperceptible sarcasm in his tone. This hint of sarcasm was like a needle pricking Lin Fengting's heart, and directly made his smile become forced. "Are you blaming your father for being blind to become sworn brothers with us? In this situation, I don't blame anyone." Li Tianlan shook his head expressionlessly, looked at Lin Fengting, and said calmly, "Senior, are you here today to talk about the old days? Zhuanyuantai has disappeared, so it seems meaningless to talk about the old days." Lin Fengting took a deep look at Li Tianlan. The corner of his mouth moved slightly, and he said with some difficulty, "When the great change happened, I wasn't in Zhongzhou state. When I heard the news and rushed back, everything had happened, Senior." Li Tianlan said calmly, "When the Lin family handed Zhuanyuantai to the Li family, you actually had nothing to do with Zhuanyuantai, so you don't need to explain anything, and I don't need to understand anything. Zhuanyuantai belongs to the Li family, and I'm in this generation. As long as I'm alive, one day I'll take back everything that the Li family lost. I won't blame you, Senior. I'm not qualified or in a position to do so. I once had a teacher who told me that as long as you have a clear conscience, that's enough." A clear conscience? Lin Fengting's eyes were bleak. If he really had a clear conscience, why did he show up here today? "These years it's been hard, hasn't it?" Lin Fengting asked in a hoarse voice, and his face seemed a little haggard. Li Tianlan glanced at him, grinned and said, "Unspeakably hard. Over the years, how many members of the Li family died with grievances? How many gnashed their teeth? How much resentment and unwillingness? How much despair and numbness? From the extreme glory to the downfall. How could words describe the bitterness of the Li family over the years? Everything will be fine. It will be better soon." Li Tianlan said softly with a firm expression. Lin Fengting sighed softly, reached into his arms, and handed a yellowed ancient book to Li Tianlan. "I won't help you take revenge." Lin Fengting said softly, "I may never be as good as you at this point. The Lin family has long lost the drive of our ancestors, and we don't need to stand aloof from the world. Now we all enjoy this feeling. So the Lin family won't help you reappear Zhuanyuantai." He paused and continued, "But there are some things that the Lin family owed the Li family back then. When it's time to pay it back, we'll pay it back." Li Tianlan took the ancient book calmly, but he didn't open it. He just kept silent. When the Lin family left Zhongzhou state, and left most of the things in Zhuanyuantai to the Li family, they also took two things with them. Lin Fengting said slowly, "One is the ancestor's sword, and the other is this half-style sword manual." "Half-style?" Li Tianlan frowned slightly. "Half-style?" Lin Fengting nodded. "The last move of the 24 moves of sword is called Break of Reincarnation, which is the half-style in front of you. This move is incomplete. But for hundreds of years, no one in the Li family has ever practiced the invincible manual, So no one has ever found this sword move that belongs to the invincible manual. Now I give you this half-style. As for whether you can complete it or not, it's up to you. The 24 moves of sword, break of reincarnation. Li Tianlan's heart was in turmoil. After a long time he asked softly, why is it a half-style? He had no doubt about the ancestors' talent. How could the only person who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the heavenly sun in 500 years, and establish Zhuanyuantai, not complete the half-style sword manual? However, that ancestor had left behind half a sword manual in the end. Why was that so? Maybe for the ancestor, the half-style sword manual is the best. Lin Fengting smiled. The unique skill of the Wang family of Beihai is unparalleled in the world. Their strongest sword move is called Six Paths of Reincarnation. Six Paths of Reincarnation. Break of Reincarnation. Half-style sword manual. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. Was the 24 moves of sword a sword move specially aimed at Six Paths of Reincarnation? The half-style was the sword manual, and the other half was the affection. The meaning behind this half move was really profound. Thank you. Holding the sword manual, Li Tianlan took a deep look at Lin Fengting and said, if you want, you can give this half-style sword manual to Tribulation for reference. Maybe it will help him break through to the invincible realm. Lin Fengting looked at Li Tianlan and inadvertently revealed some secrets. He said, the dark world will change greatly, and it will even change the current situation. Tianlan, do you need me to do anything for you? You just said you wouldn't help me. Li Tianlan shook his head with the sword manual in his hand. I won't help you get revenge. But I feel guilty about what happened back then. I owe my second brother and the Li family a sword move. I'd better pay it back to you. Lin Fengting said with a smile. Li Tianlan was silent. Lin Fengting narrowed his eyes and continued. After the top 5 on the divine list, I can kill them with one sword move. This sword move was so heavy that even if Li Tianlan was deep in thought, he couldn't help but change his expression. Lin Fengting took out a note with a phone number on it and handed it to Li Tianlan. He chuckled and said, this is my contact information. I've used it for more than 20 years. When you need this sword move, you can call me at any time. Remember, there is only one sword move. He patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder, and his figure gradually became faint and finally disappeared completely. Li Tianlan stood there for half an hour before he took the sky attack and walked out of the warehouse in silence. In the hot and dry air, the scorching sun rose and the sky was clear. Li Tianlan's heart became more and more depressed. All kinds of emotions piled up in his heart and almost overwhelmed him. The half-style 24 moves of sword was affection. Lin Fengting's sword move was also affection. But what did this seemingly deep affection and righteousness represent? Li Tianlan gritted his teeth and trembled all over. There seemed to be thousands of sword intents occupying his soul and his chest, and he couldn't wait to vent them. Li Tianlan suddenly raised the sky attack in his hand. The silver body of the gun was facing the sky, overflowing with light. Li Tianlan's fingers pulled the trigger with all his strength. Bang! The violent gunshot echoed in the sky. Under the huge impact, Li Tianlan suddenly raised his head and let out a long roar. A large amount of air surged and gathered around him crazily. The gunshot kept ringing, but Li Tianlan was still pulling the trigger, letting his physical strength be consumed crazily. His frivolous and presumptuous roar went straight to the sky, with endless resentment and madness that almost released the whole soul, surging endlessly in the entire training ground. There was an infinite amount of sword intents breaking out around him. In the echoing gunshot and roar, Li Tianlan's physical strength was exhausted, and his sword intents were scattered. A large amount of air whistled and shook. After the gunshot and roar, a young and clear voice rang out. It was a simple only one word. Stop! The whistling air suddenly paused, and then instantly exploded. The wind whistled, and it was as cold as a knife. A word moved the world. Tribulation's eyes lit up. It was not the light of satisfaction, but a real surprise. Chapter 129. When it came to the Fengshui treasure land by the West Lake, all the locals in Lin would probably think of Lonely Mountain, which carried too much history and stories. But when it came to Mount Qingyun, few people knew it, even if they were locals. Mount Qingyun was a part of Lonely Mountain. It was named after Great Master Wu Wei in recent years. It occupied about 3/10 of the area of Lonely Mountain, surrounded by blue waves all the year round. The mountain was lush with flowers and plants, and the pavilions were well proportioned. It was like a natural garden that blended the beauty of nature and art. It was natural and beautiful. In terms of beautiful scenery, Mount Qingyun might not outshine Lonely Mountain. But in terms of magnificent fate, Mount Qingyun could definitely be regarded as the most prosperous place in the whole Jiangxi province. Here you can go straight to Qingyun. If Qingyun doesn't fall, the power of heaven won't fall. Great Master Wu Wei's words were said 20 years ago, and they were still circulating in the top circles of Zhengzhou State. For many years, some blind forces had tried to attack Mount Qingyun, but they all died one after another on the way to Qingyun. The reason was not Mount Qingyun, but Qingyun Temple. This was the place where Great Master Wu Wei lived in seclusion. Although he traveled outside all year round, as a metaphysics grandmaster, how terrifying the connections he had accumulated for most of his life were. He was not an invincible realm expert, but as long as he was willing, many invincible realm experts were willing to serve him. Therefore, on Mount Qingyun, as long as Great Master Wu Wei did not agree, other people who wanted to attack Mount Qingyun would die halfway before they could even go up the mountain. Like Lonely Mountain, Mount Qingyun was open to the public, but Qingyun Temple in the core area was off limits to idlers. The temple with yellow walls and green tiles was not large, with an area of 4,000 or 5,000 square meters. It was exquisite and pocket-sized but not simple. When the master traveled outside, there were only 2 disciples in the temple. Without the need for incense, the temple was truly detached from worldly affairs. It only talked about fate and cause and effect. Those who were not destined to see the living Buddha could not see it. June 9th. It rained on Lonely Mountain, and the rain hit the green leaves. During the rain, Lonely Mountain was covered with clouds and water, and the mist was vast. Boating on the lake, traversing through a vast expanse of misty mountains and waters. The green mountains and clear waters formed a natural charm. It was like a freehand landscape painting. At first glance, it was refreshing, but after a moment of concentration, one would be infatuated. The goddess in the painting was like a fairy descending to the mortal world, standing at the bow of the ship. Raindrops fell at an angle, and ripples spread across the lake. Amidst the gentle breeze and morning mist, the woman standing at the bow of the boat seemed to be walking on water. Her fine black hair danced in the wind, and her beauty was unparalleled, depleting a lake of mountains and rivers. It was a flourishing age. She was a peerless beauty that could cause the downfall of a city. Flaming Fire liked watching Qin Weibai in this state. It was a kind of liking that had nothing to do with lust or pursuit. It was simple and pure. At this time, Qin Weibai was quiet, but with a kind of unparalleled charm, like the most elegant and lively scenery in the world. Naturally, she was breathtaking. All the charm that could overturn the world was gathered here. She was an outstanding beauty, but she was detached from the world. Under the rain curtain, the clear blue water receded. The boat slowly approached the shore. Flaming Fire took a step forward subconsciously, and reached out to help Qin Weibai. "I'm not that weak yet." Qin Weibai chuckled and briskly walked up the bluestone steps on the shore, and went up the mountain. She was wearing a white elegant dress embroidered with gold threads, and a pair of embroidered cloth shoes. Her fine black hair fell on her shoulders. She walked on the mountain path filled with morning mist. The green mountains were charming, and the beauty was cold. The mountains, the water, and the scenery seemed to be detached from the world with Qin Weibai, far away from the hustle and bustle. The air was fresh. The path was long and quiet. The charming scenery of the West Lake gradually fell under her feet. Qin Weibai's beautiful figure was neither fast nor slow. She entered Lonely Mountain and Mount Qingyun. She became more and more ethereal, as if she was above the mortal world. When Tianlong called me, I lied to him that I was still abroad and didn't go to see him when I went to Huiting. Flaming Fire, do you think he will be angry? Qin Weibai suddenly said softly, as if she was asking, but also as if she was talking to herself. Flaming Fire, who was obsessed with her boss's back, suddenly felt irritated. Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan again. The muscles at the corners of Flaming Fire's eyes twitched slightly, and she said in a stiff tone, "Boss, it's for his own good. He's going to leave today, so he can't be distracted." Qin Weibai gently nodded and continued to walk. Along the way, there was a delicate fragrance floating everywhere, touching people's hearts. "Have you sent the medicine?" "Yes." Flaming Fire nodded and said simply, "Horsewoman will set off with him. Don't worry, boss." Qin Weibai smiled and continued to go up the mountain. She was still extremely beautiful, but in Flaming Fire's eyes, the boss, who was detached from the world, suddenly walked into the world of mortals and turned from a goddess to a happy little woman. No, it was a little woman. Flaming Fire's heart twitched fiercely, and she subconsciously imagined the scene of Li Tianlan pressing on the boss's body. She became more and more irritated, and she simply gnashed her teeth. This bastard, such good fortune, he should really be struck by lightning from the heavens. Qingyun Temple was in sight in the distance in a hazy landscape. Qin Weibai slightly quickened her pace, and went straight to the gate of Qingyun Temple. On both sides of the temple gate, two middle-aged monks in plain monk robes stood quietly outside the gate. Seeing Qin Weibai in a white dress coming over, the two smiled and put their palms together, their posture natural and peaceful. Qin Weibai gently bowed and said, "Greetings, two senior brothers. Master is chanting scriptures in the temple. Go in," the monk on the right said with a smile. The monk on the right smiled and said, his Dharma name was Ruzhen, and the one on the left was his junior brother Rui. The two of them were not only brothers, but they were also twins who looked exactly the same. They were kind and gentle. Although they had never truly attained Tao, they already had the demeanor of an eminent monk. Qin Weibai smiled and nodded, but her body did not move. She whispered, "Are you waiting for someone, senior brothers? Will there be any distinguished guests in the temple?" "It's Taoist Xianxuanzi," Rui said slowly. Unlike his senior brother Ruzhen, his voice was low and majestic, and every word was powerful. "Today, Taoist Xianxuanzi will deduce the secrets of heaven, and deduce the general trend with my master." Deduce the secrets of heaven, and the general trend. Qin Weibai frowned slightly. In metaphysics, if one believed it, it would exist. If one didn't believe it, it wouldn't exist. But fate did exist. If one forcibly deduced the secrets of heaven with his own fate, he would be backfired. Great Master Wu Wei was nearly 80 years old. Even if Xianxuanzi bore the karma by his side, he would have to pay a high price afterward. Ruzhen looked at Qin Weibai's face and sighed. President Li Huaqing just left yesterday. The president personally asked, how could Master not agree? Qin Weibai fell silent. She naturally knew why the president of Zhongzhou State came to Mount Qingyun in person. The dark world was about to change dramatically, and she, or the Samsara Palace itself, was one of the most important driving forces behind the scenes. She knew all the karma best. Go in. Ruzhen smiled and said again. Qin Weibai nodded and went straight into the temple gate. In the small temple, the Supermaster Hall came into view. Flaming Fire stood in front of the hall, and did not move forward. In front of the Supermaster Hall, the Supermaster stopped. Qin Weibai passed through the Supermaster Hall alone, and entered the Mahavira's Hall. A low and soft chanting of sutras rang out, and echoed in the courtyard. It seemed to come from the void and spread throughout the mortal world, like Sanskrit singing. Great Master Wu Wei, dressed in a bright cassock, closed his eyes and chanted sutras in the sound of the wooden fish. Buddha sat in the hall, looking solemn. Qin Weibai walked to Great Master Wu Wei and bowed down to him with a devout and awe look, meticulous and respectful. Since you don't believe in Buddha, why bend your knees? The sound of chanting lingered in the hall. Great Master Wu Wei had opened his eyes and looked at Qin Weibai, who looked more and more gentle and beautiful, and said with a chuckle, I believe in fate. Qin Weibai straightened up and said calmly, Believe in fate? Great Master Wu Wei smiled and said noncommittally, If you really believe in fate, how can you go against the will of heaven? He stood up, walked slowly out of the hall, and sighed softly. You are still too stubborn after all. Qin Weibai followed Great Master Wu Wei in silence and said softly, From the day you picked me up and adopted me, you should have known that my destiny is against the will of heaven. Is it not the will of heaven to go against the will of heaven? Great Master Wu Wei's eyes were in a trance. He seemed to think of the little girl who was thinly dressed, but calm as water in the wind and snow many years ago. That year, he traveled to the southwest and stayed there for a full 6 years. Everything had a cause and effect. He just didn't know if the good karma of the past could bear good results in the future. The great master sighed softly, turned the Buddha beads in his hand, and said, "You are obsessed with appearances. It should be so." Qin Weibai chuckled and said, "Great master, I don't want to go against the will of heaven, but everything about Tianlan is my destiny. If that's not the case, is there any meaning to my existence? You are not you. He is not him." Great Master Wu Wei's meaning was concise and shocking. Qin Weibai seemed to understand and not understand at the same time. The wind blew through the tips of her hair, making her long hair rise gently. Walking silently beside Great Master Wu Wei, she looked more and more holy and cold. "My destiny is as it should be," she murmured softly. Although her tone was light, it revealed a kind of soul-penetrating depth. Great Master Wu Wei shook his head slightly and said no more. Perhaps, as Qin Weibai said, when he decided to adopt her when she was still a little girl, he already knew what would happen in the future. He couldn't change it. The will of heaven could be violated, but the will of heaven could not be violated. "Why are you here?" He glanced at Qin Weibai and changed the subject with a smile. "How is Tianlan's birth destiny?" Qin Weibai asked straightforwardly. After obtaining Hanyu Palace and Bright Moon Garden, his divine spirit has condensed initially, and he has some vitality. Great Master Wu Wei's tone was calm. "But it's not enough, is it?" Qin Weibai stopped. In front of them was a small pond in the temple. The water was clear and the fish were swimming leisurely. How can there be a perfect thing in the world? He was destined to die. He changed his destiny against heaven. You are willing to bear the tribulation for him, and I condensed the divine spirit. That's why he has today's situation. For him, it's enough. Great Master Wu Wei looked at the fish in the pond and said with a kind smile, "What if I add a condensed dragon soul? What should I do?" Qin Weibai asked softly. Great Master Wu Wei turned his head sharply, looked at Qin Weibai's calm face and said, "Are you going to fight against the Jiang family?" "I just want to make it easier for my man." Qin Weibai said indifferently, "Saint has already taken action on Dragon Gate Mountain, so I want to ask you to do it again. Break the divine spirit with the dragon soul, and let Tianlan's birth destiny return to chaos." She paused and said coldly, "The world is like a chessboard, and the chosen one is a chess piece. What kind of chosen one is this? No one deserves to control the fate of my man. The fate that can't be seen by others is the biggest variable, isn't it? If there is a backlash, I'm willing to bear it alone." Great Master Wu Wei's face suddenly changed. He stared at Qin Weibai without blinking. "You can't bear such a backlash." After a long silence, he looked at Qin Weibai and said coldly. Qin Weibai turned to face Great Master Wu Wei, bowed deeply and said, "Please grant my wish, Great Master." Great Master Wu Wei flicked his sleeves and turned around without saying a word. Qin Weibai bowed and said again, "Please grant my wish, foster father." Great Master Wu Wei trembled all over. After a while he said slowly, "Is it worth it? If Li Tianlan knew you were willing to do this, I'm afraid he wouldn't appreciate it. And after his birth destiny returns to chaos, no one can see what will happen to him in the future. The doomed situation has been broken. It's hard to say whether he will have bad luck or good luck in the future. Are you sure that this is good for him? It's worth it." Qin Weibai straightened up and said with a smile, "No matter how many good luck he has ahead of him, so what? He has at most 1 or 2 out of 10 chances of survival. It's better to let his birth destiny return to chaos. His fate, his future, whether good luck or bad luck, are all in his control. Isn't that good?" "But you..." Great Master Wu Wei hesitated. "I'll do whatever it takes." Qin Weibai's tone grew calmer. The morning wind blew, carrying the morning mist from the temple straight to the lake and into the distance. Great Master Wu Wei sighed deeply and said softly, "The dragon head is extremely important, but the dragon scale is also the key. The Jiang family has reached a critical moment of gathering the dragon soul. Where is the dragon scale? A sharp and cold light flashed in Qin Weibai's eyes. She whispered, "The dragon scale is in Kunlun Mountain, of course." Great Master Wu Wei narrowed his eyes and said lightly, "The dragon soul breaks the celestial spirit, and the birth destiny returns to chaos. It's also the foundation of the emperor. How bold you are! Is this what you've gained this time?" "There are others." Qin Weibai looked calm. Great Master Wu Wei looked at Qin Weibai seriously. After a while he shook his head and said, "What you've done this time is shocking and even enough to change history. From today on, you owe the whole dark world a fulfillment. The so-called tribulation may start because of this." Qin Weibai turned to look at the gloomy sky filled with the morning mist and said with a smile, "If what I love can't be fulfilled, even if the world breaks, so what?" Chapter 130. It's the beginning of the month. Brothers with monthly tickets, please vote for a guaranteed monthly ticket. If I can't get what I love, so what if the world is broken? Even if the world is turned upside down, even if the world falls apart, what does it have to do with me? Even an eminent monk like Great Master Wu Wei was silent for a long time after hearing this remark, and didn't know what to say. How determined and affectionate did she have to be to make this statement, which sounded overbearing and affectionate, but was actually crazy? It was said that Qin Weibai was an outstanding beauty. It was said that Qin Weibai was powerful and resourceful. It was said that Qin Weibai charmed all living beings. But she was always herself. Her heart was like ice and snow, crystal clear, and she never forgot her original intention. She lived for one person all her life, at all costs. Was this love in the mortal world? Or was it a demon outside the mortal world? Karma. Great Master Wu Wei sighed deeply, and his tone was helpless and desolate. "I don't want to correct the karma. I just want the beginning and the end. Where is the karma?" Qin Weibai stroked the long hair beside her ears. She was fresh and elegant, like a lotus flower by the lake, elegant and holy, white and flawless. She looked at the metaphysics grandmaster in front of her seriously and said softly, "Please help me, Great Master." Great Master Wu Wei stooped slightly. His kasaya was still bright and dazzling, but his spirit, chi and spirit were a little haggard. In a short time, in a few words, the eminent monk could clearly feel that he was entangled in karma, and could hardly bear the burden. "I'll do my best." He opened his mouth and finally spoke, but his tone was extremely difficult. "Thank you, Great Master." Qin Weibai bowed again and said respectfully, "I heard that the president of Zhongzhou State asked you to deduce the secrets of heaven. This matter is in the bag. Great Master, you don't have to do your best. Just deal with it casually to avoid being backfired." "In the bag?" Great Master Wu Wei's eyes narrowed slightly. Qin Weibai nodded calmly, and her eyes were natural and sure. "If that's the case, are you really the one behind this?" Great Master Wu Wei asked directly. In fact, he only knew that Zhongzhou State was about to make a big move, but he didn't know the specific plan. As a metaphysics grandmaster, he didn't need a detailed battle plan. When President Li Huaqing visited Qingyan Temple, he only gave a general direction. At that time, Great Master Wu Wei only felt that the plan was crazy, but when he thought about it carefully, he found that it was operable. If Qin Weibai and Samsara Palace were pushing it behind the scenes, then it would be more certain. After all, Zhongzhou State might be in a hurry, but since Samsara dared to take action, it would never be rash. They should have been preparing for a long time. It's a heaven-sent opportunity. Qin Weibai didn't admit it or deny it. She just spoke calmly. "I believe in a heaven-sent opportunity. But is it really just a coincidence?" Great Master Wu Wei asked with a laugh. "Samsara is prepared for this, but this opportunity is indeed created inadvertently. But since the opportunity has appeared, there is no reason to miss it." Qin Weibai told the truth without any concealment. As the main planner of this top-secret operation, the confidentiality agreement of Zhongzhou State was like waste paper to her. It was just a trifle for her to leak it to Great Master Wu Wei. "I didn't expect the higher-ups to be so." The old monk shook his head. He didn't know whether to describe it as decisive or sloppy. Qin Weibai smiled and said calmly, Zhongzhou State is more urgent than us. In recent years, the atmosphere between the 6 groups in Zhongzhou State has been very strange. They need external interests and pressure to ease and divert internal contradictions most. We pushed them a little, and they agreed immediately without hesitation. After this, the 6 groups will each get something. The visible and invisible benefits can't be measured, and it's also good for the country. They have no reason to refuse. Is it really good for the country? Great Master Wu Wei looked at Qin Weibai deeply and said with a chuckle, the 6 groups will each get something, but samsara is a foreign force. What can you get from this operation? At least from all the clues that have emerged now, I don't see any benefits for you from this operation. As for the dragon soul gathered by the Jiang family, you took it in the chaos at most, and it's not a bargaining chip. In this way, his eyes seemed to gradually become sharp. In this way, is samsara really doing a good deed and learning from Lei Feng this time? Just to fulfill the Shenzhou Empire? You weaken your own importance in the eyes of Zhongzhou State? Qin Weibai tilted her head and said with a faint smile, isn't that dragon soul enough? It may be enough for you, but for the whole samsara it's too little. Great Master Wu Wei shook his head and said, it's too little. Don't worry. Qin Weibai looked down at the pool under her feet, and her eyes were in a trance. This is good for the country. As long as some people don't do stupid things, they will understand sooner or later. Great Master Wu Wei seemed to be particularly talkative today. In the past, he lived in Mount Qingyun, and had always turned a blind eye to the disturbances of the outside world. But today, for the intrigues in the mortal world, he was completely determined to get to the bottom of it, which was completely different from usual. What on earth does samsara want? Create an opportunity. Qin Weibai's eyes were calm. An opportunity that can be seized. As for whether the other party will seize it, it's hard to say. I'm only responsible for giving this opportunity out. Great Master Wu Wei was silent, trying to digest all this in his mind. Some clues had become clear with their questions and answers, but there were also some clues that were still shrouded in clouds and fog. These unknowns could not be solved by metaphysics. It was related to the 6 groups of Zhongzhou State, and even the entire dark world. In such a general trend, using metaphysics to deduce it had already violated the heavenly attack. Trying to see through the fog was tantamount to courting death. So the new agency of Zhongzhou State has been established. Great Master Wu Wei took the initiative to ask again. Qin Weibai planned and promoted this matter. Now she had come out to operate it. All this showed that the action had reached a critical moment. The establishment of the new agency of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State might be the official start of the action. It's established. Qin Weibai nodded. The president has made up his mind. It should be decided when he went back from your place. The meeting of the decision-making committee lasted until midnight. It was temporarily named the Snowdance Corps, and Gu Qianchuan, the first elder of Kunlun City, served as the commander. Great Master Wu Wei shook his head subconsciously. Kunlun City, the Wang family of Beihai, the academics, and Sai City were all extremely eager in this action. Great Master Wu Wei was almost certain that this was an action with their own thoughts and purposes. It was not an exaggeration to say that each party had its own ulterior motives. However, while they all had their own plans, all parties seemed to really do their best in the overall action. As for the result, only God knew. Maybe Qin Weibai also knew? Great Master Wu Wei looked at Qin Weibai again, and shook his head again. The little girl he adopted was really getting more and more difficult to grasp. Great Master, if it were before, you would never ask me these questions. Qin Weibai was silent for a while, then suddenly said with a smile, with a meaningful tone. Great Master Wu Wei smiled slightly and said slowly, I'm just curious. Just take it as a story. Qin Weibai nodded and didn't care much about this matter. She just whispered, what about what I'm asking for? Great Master Wu Wei looked at Qin Weibai. In a trance, he seemed to see the end of his fate and what would happen a long, long time later. I'll do my best. He finally opened his mouth and said in a calm tone. Qin Weibai nodded and didn't say thank you. Great Master Wu Wei had already turned around. He waved his hand casually and said, "You can go down the mountain." Qin Weibai bowed again, then straightened up and walked to the Supermaster Hall in the front yard. The vicissitudes of the great master's voice sounded behind her, gentle and calm, with a kind of open-mindedness that saw through the mortal world. "It's not too late for you to regret it now. Once the dragon soul breaks the celestial spirit, the severity of the backfire is hard to say, but your original chaotic fate must be clear." "If. Why should I regret it?" Qin Weibai's slim and tall figure didn't stop. She entered the Supermaster Hall in an elegant white dress. Her cold and resolute voice also reached Great Master Wuwei's ears. "I won't regret it until I die." In front of the Mahavira's hall, Great Master Wuwei, who was alone, finally showed an undisguised wry smile, helpless and regretful. He silently turned around and walked back into the hall. The whistling wind fell outside the hall, along with the pitter-patter of rain. Inside the hall, the candlelight was ethereal and quiet, but a Buddha's heart suddenly rippled. The rain was getting heavier. Qin Weibai stepped out of the Supermaster Hall. Standing in front of the hall, Flaming Fire had already held up an oil paper umbrella that she had bought by the lake when she came. The surface of the umbrella was clean, which complemented the quiet Buddhist temple and the surrounding green mountains and rivers. Seeing Qin Weibai come out, Flaming Fire instinctively took a step forward and covered Qin Weibai's head with the umbrella. "Let's go." Qin Weibai turned to look at the space behind the Supermaster Hall. Her bright eyes twinkled. After a long time, she turned around gently and said in a calm tone, "Boss, did you have a bad trip?" Flaming Fire asked subconsciously. "No." Qin Weibai shook her head and said softly, "I had a good harvest." "Oh," Flaming Fire said and walked out of the temple. Then she asked, "Where are we going now?" Outside the temple, Ruzhen and Rui had been dozens of meters away from the temple. A sage-like old Taoist in a wide robe with big sleeves floated over with a horsetail whisk in his hand. Qin Weibai glanced at him and said quietly, "To Jinling. To the Eastern Theater of Operations." The two walked out of the temple gate. The old Taoist, who came to visit alone, entered the temple gate accompanied by Ruzhen and Rui. Ruzhen and Rui also nodded slightly to Qin Weibai without saying much. When the two sides were about to pass each other, Xian Xuanzi, who came to invite Great Master Wu Wei to deduce the secrets of heaven, narrowed his eyes slightly, and his eyes also fell on Qin Weibai. "Lay Buddhist Qin?" Xian Xuanzi stopped and said with a smile, "It's been a few years. You are more charming than before." Qin Weibai smiled slightly. Not to mention being sincere, she didn't even bother to be perfunctory. Few people knew that a few years ago, when Xian Xuanzi traveled to Huading, he met Qin Weibai, who was just over 20 years old at that time, and gave a comment that was completely opposite to that of Wang Tianzong, the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai, king inside and sage outside. But what no one knew was that the two people who met for the first time did not have a good talk in the end, and it could even be said that they parted on bad terms. In the face of Qin Weibai's cold attitude at this time, Xian Xuanzi's eyes did not feel embarrassed. His smile remained unchanged, and he said softly, "Meeting you here, I can be sure. I think this big move in the dark world should be your doing?" Qin Weibai did not look at him. After a smile, she went straight ahead with Flaming Fire. They brushed past each other. Behind her, Xian Xuanzi's clear, gentle, and somewhat dignified voice continued to ring, echoing in the mountain forest. "You are not a person of the mortal world. How can you mess up the world?" Qin Weibai's footsteps paused slightly, and she said without looking back, "How can a person of the mortal world mess up the world?" The corner of Xian Xuanzi's mouth moved, but Qin Weibai had already gone far. In the gradually heavy rain, this Taoist wonder stood in the same place for nearly 20 minutes before taking a deep breath and turning to the temple. Ruzhen and Rui closed the temple gate. In the wind and rain, the forest leaves swayed. The small temple with its gate closed became quieter. Xian Xuanzi walked with Ruzhen and Rui. They passed through the Supermaster Hall. A gust of wind, as cold as winter, suddenly rose. It appeared in the most inappropriate season, and went straight into the Mahavira Hall. In the strong wind, the two pillars in front of the Mahavira Hall clearly cracked, and the whole hall was shaking in the wind. Bricks and tiles flew and scattered everywhere. The wind blew past. Crash! Under the dumbfounded gazes of the three people, the small but imposing hall of great strength suddenly collapsed and became a pile of ruins. The golden body of Buddha bathed in the rootless water between heaven and earth, becoming more and more compassionate and solemn. Xian Xuanzi's expression changed dramatically. In the ruins, an old man in a bright cassock stood up. He held a broken disc in his hand and smiled peacefully. Amitabha, Taoist brother, you have come from afar. Sorry to see you. Xian Xuanzi, who was pale, did not even have time to salute. He took 2 steps forward, looked at Great Master Wu Wei in front of him, and said in a daze, "How could this be? Why? Let's not talk about this. It's just more trouble." The old man held the disc and smiled. He was indeed an old man. His cassock was still bright and dazzling in the rain, but his white hair, which almost reached his shoulders, was like ice and snow, stinging everyone's eyes fiercely. The living Buddha had white hair. The old man, whose breath was so weak that it was almost non-existent, grasped the disc in his hand, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with the other hand, and said with a chuckle, "Taoist brother, don't worry about it. I'm just doing what I'm asked to do. Today's deduction of the secrets of heaven will not let you down." Doing what I'm asked to do. Xian Xuanzi suddenly reacted. Is it Qin Wei Bai? Chapter 131. Sorry, I've had too many things to do these 2 days. Now that I'm done, I still owe 5 chapters. I'll make up for it as soon as possible. June 10th. The night was as cool as water, and the waning moon shone brightly. Perhaps because it was far away from Huading, the night sky of the Sky Academy seemed particularly gloomy. The starry sky was bright and boundless. The waning moon hung in the sky, and several obvious big stars of Orion were shining brightly. This scene was not poetic or picturesque, but it was enough to surprise people to see such a scene in Huading. The Yangtze River flowed into the sea, and the sound of the waves was still there. On the beach at the junction of the river and the sea, Lin Fengting, who was dressed casually, sat quietly on the shore with a pot of wine in his hand. He looked up at the starry sky above him with a calm expression. He had been in Huading for a month, but it was the first day that he officially lived in the Sky Academy under the attention of the Academy. Lin Fengting lived in the Sky Academy as a spectator. This identity was also in line with his purpose of coming to watch the show. The master of Samsara Palace fought against the lord of Kunlun City. This battle of the invincible realm was now the most important event in the Dark World. The 15th of June was the day of the final battle. There were still 5 days until today. Lin Fengting was the first foreign expert of the invincible realm to come to watch the ceremony. And it could be foreseen that in the next few days, there would be more experts of the invincible realm coming to Zhongzhou State to watch this battle of the invincible realm, which was related to the pattern of the divine list. The Sky Academy attached great importance to every expert who came to watch the ceremony. Before they came, they had arranged for everyone's clothing, food, housing and transportation in advance. In the residential area, an apartment building closest to the site of the final battle had been vacated. There were 12 apartments on 6 floors, which was more than enough to accommodate all the experts who came to watch the ceremony. Lin Fengting was the first to come, so he occupied the best floor. After settling down, in the afterglow of the setting sun, this invincible realm expert, whose strength was enough to rank at the top of the divine list but was unknown to others, went directly to the edge of the river and sea with a flagon. As the sun set, the bright moon rose high in the sky. The cold moonlight shone on the surface of the sea. The waves surged and sparkled. It was a magnificent scene. Lin Fengting took a big gulp of the wine in the pot and sighed contentedly. As the strong wine entered his stomach, his body warmed and his heart warmed. Mr. is indeed in a good mood. Drinking wine in front of the sea. Was it waiting for the magnificent waves after the stormy waves? Or are you waiting for the blue sea and blue sky after the wind and waves have calmed down? An elegant voice rang out amidst the pleasant sound of the waves, full of laughter. Lin Fengting didn't turn his head. He just gently twirled the silver wine pot in his hand and said with a warm smile, "Whether it's the magnificent waves or the blue sky, They are all scenery in my eyes. Oh. Is it just scenery? Zhuang Huayang, the headmaster of the Sky Academy, came to Lin Fengting with an oiled paper bag. His expression was casual, but his eyes were extremely serious. It's just scenery. Lin Fengting opened the wine jug again and drank a mouthful of wine. The wine jug in his hand was extremely large, and its entire body was silvery white. Under the bright moonlight, it glowed with an enchanting luster. If one only looked at its appearance, the entire jug of wine would probably be able to hold 2 to 3 caddies of white wine. This was enough to show how terrifying his alcohol tolerance was. He put down the wine jug and looked at the river and the sea in front of him with a gentle look in his eyes. Endless water light flowed along with the light. For a moment, no one could tell whether he was looking at the sea or the moon. What's the matter, Principal? Lin Fengting did not look at Zhuang Huayang beside him, but asked casually with a chuckle. I heard that you declined the invitation to the meeting of the decision-making committee and stayed in the academy. As the host, you should at least show your face. Zhuang Huayang sat down beside Lin Fengting, handed over the oiled paper bag in his hand, and said with a smile, Our hometown spiced beef is very famous in the whole Zhongzhou state. It goes well with your wine. Thank you. Lin Fengting took it with a smile. In anyone's eyes, this handsome uncle, who was smiling all day long, was an extremely easygoing person. He was so easy to talk to that he had no temper at all. He opened the oiled paper bag, directly reached in with his hand, grabbed a piece of beef, and tasted it. He nodded and praised. Crisp but not scattered, fragrant but not greasy, delicious. He took another sip of wine and said with a chuckle, To tell you the truth, I have no ambition in my life. It's enough to have beauties by my side, beautiful scenery in front of me, and good wine in hand. Besides these 3 things, the least I can't do without is delicious food. Zhuang Huayang's eyes narrowed slightly, and he probed calmly. At present, the dark world is in turmoil. Maybe in a year, maybe in a month, the pattern of the dark world may undergo major changes. Don't you have any ideas, sir? Although it was a test at this point, the content could be said to be extremely straightforward, and could even be said to be straightforward. Rising wind and clouds? Lin Fengting laughed. That's not necessarily true. I think the dark world is completely a pool of stagnant water at present. It's very stable. Zhuang Huayang smiled and immediately knew that it was useless for him to say more, so he simply kept silent sensibly. What Lin Fengting said was right. From May to June, the dark world was indeed like a pool of stagnant water. But extreme peace in the dark world, which was constantly rubbing against each other, meant extreme abnormality. It was like the calm before the storm. Now the whole dark world was tense, and everyone was waiting. They were waiting for the end of the battle that would attract worldwide attention 5 days later. Night Spirit, the behemoth that had once dominated the whole dark world, had been destroyed. In more than a month, after the initial restlessness, all the dark forces had calmed down. It could be said that this was the biggest cake in the dark world at present. Any piece of it would be of great benefit. Samsara destroyed Night Spirit, so it should be the biggest beneficiary of this feast. But the dark world had never been reasonable. It was one thing for Samsara to destroy Night Spirit, but it was another thing whether it could swallow Night Spirit or not. Night Spirit and Samsara were not the only forces in the dark world. It was as difficult as going to heaven to swallow everything. Every superpower had its own goal. It was like a piece of cake. You get a piece, and I get a piece. How much of it was left for Samsara in the end depended entirely on the strength and power of Samsara Palace, and the master of Samsara Palace. In the face of great benefits, the superpowers in the dark world did not hesitate to go to war, but few people were willing to fight to the death. The strength of the master of Samsara Palace was the key to how to grasp the delicate balance in the middle. When the superpowers were ready to take action against Night Spirit, and even began to test Samsara Palace, the master of Samsara Palace suddenly challenged Gu Xingyun, the god of war of Zhongzhou state. Such news immediately attracted the attention of the whole world. A fight to the death. Gu Xingyun, the god of war of Zhongzhou state, ranked 4th on the divine list. The master of Samsara Palace ranked 7th on the divine list. The result of this battle of the invincible realm, to put it seriously, was even directly related to the fate of Samsara Palace or the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State in the next decades. As for Night Spirit, which had been destroyed, it was a great gift. If the master of Samsara Palace died in the Sky Academy, not to mention Night Spirit, the entire Samsara Palace would be completely swallowed up by the superpowers in a very short time. But if Gu Xingyun died, it was enough to prove that the strength of the master of Samsara Palace was enough to rank among the top 5 on the divine list. Everyone had to respect such strength. The superpowers were bound to make major concessions to the Samsara Palace on the issue of Night Spirit. With the death of Gu Xingyun, these losses, or the benefits that they did not get, could be taken back from Zhongzhou State. The reason why this battle was the focus was that there were too many interests involved behind the scenes of this battle. Night Spirit and Samsara, Night Spirit and Zhongzhou State, and even more things that had not surfaced yet. With such a temptation, all the superpowers could not sit still. Once someone moved first, there must be someone else following closely behind. They did not want to fall behind, did not dare to fall behind, and could not fall behind. This was the attitude of the superpowers in the Dark World. Although the Dark World was calm at the moment, in fact the Sky Academy had become the focus of the whole world. Everyone was waiting for the master of Samsara Palace to win, or waiting for her to die. Lin Fengting might know these things or he might not, but it was obvious that he had no intention of getting involved now. After hearing that he refused the invitation of the Zhongzhou State Decision-Making Committee, Zhuang Huayang probably understood Lin Fengting's mind. But he could not help but test him. Now the attitude of the other party was clear. He was a little disappointed, but he would not ask for a snub. Looking at Lin Fengting, who was eating the spiced beef with relish, the old headmaster sighed slightly and finally said, "Sir, the life and death of the master of Samsara Palace. It has nothing to do with me." Lin Fengting said calmly. Zhuang Huayang nodded, and lightning flashed around him. The wind on the coast surged with moisture, blowing away the lightning. Zhuang Huayang's figure had disappeared. Lin Fengting drank and ate silently, as if the whole world had nothing to do with him. "Dad." A clear and innocent voice rang out. At the bonfire less than 50 meters behind Lin Fengting, a pure and beautiful girl ran over, handed the barbecue in her hand to Lin Fengting, and said with a smile, "Here you are, chicken wings." The young girl looked to be about 13 or 14 years old. She had a slim and exquisite figure and a pair of clear and bright eyes. She stood beside Lin Fengting with a smile, and bathed in the moonlight. Her entire person exuded a kind of pure and innocent innocence. Lin Fengting took the chicken wing with a smile, took a bite and praised, "It's much better than the spiced beef. My Chushua's talent in cooking is no less than her talent in martial arts. You will definitely have a bright future as a chef in the future." "I don't want to be a chef." Lin Chushua pouted and rolled her eyes at her father. She suddenly smiled and said, "Dad, who was that old man just now? Headmaster Zhuang Huayang?" Lin Fengting lowered his head to eat the chicken wing, nodded and said softly, "He is a very tactful person." "Tactful?" Lin Chushua tilted her little head. Lin Fengting smiled and said, "Relatively speaking." You see, as soon as the tactful person left, the untactful person came. Lin Chushua turned her head subconsciously. Under the moonlight, two somewhat blurred figures stepped over the bonfire she was barbecuing one after the other. One was dressed casually, and the other was in a military uniform. The two stepped on the sky full of moonlight, elegant and leisurely. "Chushua, go and grill 2 more pairs of chicken wings. Dad likes them." Lin Fengting put the chicken bones aside and said softly without raising his head. Lin Chushua obediently responded, and ran towards the bonfire with small steps. Her white dress fluttered in the wind. "Uncle Wang." When she was about to pass by the 2 uninvited guests, Lin Chushua stopped and whispered. Without waiting for Wang Tianzong to speak, she ran away again. Wang Tianzong smiled and shook his head. He came directly to Lin Fengting but didn't sit down. He chuckled and said, "You are so leisurely." Lin Fengting played with the flagon in his hand and said bluntly, "If you didn't come, I would be more leisurely." Beside Wang Tianzong, a short middle-aged man narrowed his eyes subconsciously, but didn't speak. The man was about 1. 6 meters tall at most. He had short hair and a mediocre appearance. Standing next to Wang Tianzong and Lin Fengting, he was somewhat inconspicuous. However, his military uniform was extremely dazzling. For golden stars were neatly arranged on the dark red epaulets. Under the moonlight, the golden stars were shining, mysterious and majestic. Marshal of Zhongzhou State. And he was also the marshal of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. Because of the different colors of the epaulets of Zhongzhou State soldiers, it was very clear which branch they belonged to. The brown-green one was the army, the sky-blue one was the Air Force, and the black one was the Navy. And the dark red epaulets only belonged to the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. Beside Wang Tianzong, the seemingly inconspicuous middle-aged man was the second marshal of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. I know. Wang Tianzong nodded with a smile. But I have to come. Is it settled? Lin Fengting asked casually. It's settled. It's settled in the early hours of this morning. Wang Tianzong whispered, Snowdance Corps. Today the decision-making committee is discussing the battle plan, and the first group of people has set off. Oh, by the way, let me introduce you. This is Gu Qianchuan, the first elder of Kunlun City and the commander of the Snowdance Corps. Gu Qianchuan, who had a prominent identity but a very inconspicuous appearance, took a step forward, took the initiative to reach out, and said with a smile, Mr. Lin, I've heard of you for a long time. Lin Fengting did not move, but said without looking back, just say it. What's the matter? Gu Qianchuan's smile froze, and the anger in his eyes flashed away. He calmly withdrew his palm, but his eyes narrowed. During this time, we hope you can stay in Zhongzhou State. If the situation gets out of control, we hope you can take action. Wang Tianzong also did not look at Gu Qianchuan, but looked at Lin Fengting seriously and said, After this, Zhongzhou State will owe you a favor. That's it. That's it. I'm not interested. Lin Fengting shook his head and stood up. I'm going to leave tomorrow. If Chu Xue hadn't insisted on seeing the Sky Academy, I might have been on the plane now. I came here to watch the fun, but there's nothing to see. What's the point of staying here? Wang Tianzong frowned slightly. Before he could figure out how to persuade him, Lin Fengting had continued to say, Besides, this time there are you Gu Xingyun, and the master of Samsara Palace. What's the use of me staying here? It's not necessary. I'm afraid there will be variables at that time. Wang Tianzong thought for a while and said, Mr. Lin. Gu Qianchuan, who was silent, suddenly opened his mouth and said sincerely, Mr. Lin, your ancestor was the war god of Zhongzhou State. He shocked the dark world for decades, swept the world, and was invincible. As the descendant of the first war god of Zhongzhou State, we hope you can. Do you have the right to speak here? Before Gu Qianchuan finished, Lin Fengting had turned his head and asked calmly, What are you talking about? You. Gu Qianchuan's face suddenly darkened. At this point, Lin Fengting's hostility to Kunlun City was obvious. For a moment, Gu Qianchuan really regretted coming here. What about me? Lin Fengting narrowed his eyes. At this moment, the handsome uncle who was full of smiles all day, had a sharpness that ordinary people avoided. My ancestor has protected Zhongzhou State for decades. Should I also protect Zhongzhou State for decades? When the Lin family left Zhongzhou State, my ancestor also left the Li family. For hundreds of years, the Li family has been the war god of Zhongzhou State. But now, the Li family was destroyed by you. And you still want me to take action? He paused, tilted his head, looked at Gu Qianchuan, and asked doubtfully, Do I owe you? Gu Qianchuan gritted his teeth and swallowed his anger. You misunderstood. Li Guangtu committed treason first. We also. I don't want to hear any nonsense. Lin Fengting said calmly, Since you're here today, I'll ask you the truth. Don't talk to me about these useless things. Did my second brother commit treason or not? Gu Qianchuan narrowed his eyes and was about to speak. Lin Fengting continued, Believe it or not, if you dare to say that my second brother committed treason again, I will dare to kill you here. Gu Qianchuan held his anger in his heart and said nothing. Don't speak? Lin Fengting smiled and continued to ask. Gu Qianchuan opened his mouth. Slap. Lin Fengting had slapped Gu Qianchuan in the face, loud and clear. Don't talk nonsense. Slap. First elder of Kunlun City, right? Slap. Commander of the Snowdance Corps, right? Slap. Marshal Gu Qianchuan, right? Slap. Do you want me to take action? Slap. I owe you, don't I? Gu Qianchuan, who was beaten by a series of slaps, saw stars in his eyes. He took more than 10 steps back in a row, and then roared angrily, "Enough!" Lin Fengting stopped as expected. The waves, which had been howling endlessly just a second ago, instantly stopped. They spread hundreds of meters. The sharp sword intent broke out on the coast. Lin Fengting took a step forward, and his sharpness shocked the world. Enough? He looked at Gu Qianchuan and said blandly, "I'm the Marshal of Zhongzhou State." Gu Qianchuan said angrily, "I'm Lin Fengting, the Commander-in-Chief of all actions in the front line. I'm here to discuss cooperation with you today, not to be insulted by you. You're so unscrupulous. Do you really think there's no one in Zhongzhou State? Do you really think there's no one in Kunlun City?" Slap. Chapter 132. Before 12 o'clock in the next chapter. The sudden special training in the Sky Academy ended on June 7th. 48 people. Gu Yunxia, the director of teaching, and Gu Qingming, the leader of the security course group, formed a group. Enchantress, the leader of the camouflage and lurking course group, formed a group. Bai Yuming, the leader of the actual combat course group, formed a group. Chen Yunlu and Qin Ke, the two deputy directors of teaching, formed a group. The three groups stopped the special training on June 7th at the same time. The special training, which lasted more than a month, came to an end. A few days before the official action, every student participating in the action needed to relax, adjust their tense nerves, and then face the more intense top-secret action. In the early stage of the action, what should be done had been done. What would happen next depended on the students themselves. Li Tianlan, who was independent of the three groups, entered the state of rest one day earlier than other students. Tribulation and Thunder God trained him day and night. This alone showed that Li Tianlan's treatment was absolutely different from that of other students. For other students, whether it was Li Beitian or Gu Yulan, the mentors just tried to improve their combat effectiveness as much as possible. As for how much they could improve, no one knew, so they just tried their best. But Tribulation and Thunder God's requirements for Li Tianlan were extremely clear. Li Tianlan possessed the flawless wind and thunder veins and exquisite bone, as well as the acquired heavenly king heart. All his conditions could be said to be flawless. He had the best inheritance, the most durable physical strength, the strongest willpower, and the fastest learning ability. Once such a person grew up, he would be completely unbeatable. Li Tianlan's biggest shortcoming now was that his realm was too low, but this was only a shortcoming, not a bad thing. At least because of his low realm, a short period of high-intensity special training could more easily squeeze his potential, so that his realm and combat effectiveness could improve faster. Therefore, for this special training, both Tribulation and Thunder God had very clear requirements for Li Tianlan. Thunder God hoped that Li Tianlan could familiarize himself with the amazing power of the sky attack in a month, and at the same time be proficient in driving all kinds of different vehicles. Tribulation hoped that Li Tianlan could go further after the special training. He was originally at the peak of the Qi-controlling realm. If he went one step further, he would reach the fulfillment of the Qi-controlling realm, or even the pseudo-invincible realm. Once this goal was achieved, although Li Tianlan's realm was not high, his real combat effectiveness would be enough to crush most of the young generation. And Li Tianlan's performance was enough to surprise people. On the day when the special training was about to end, with Lin Fengting's departure, Li Tianlan released the sword intent that had been suppressed in his heart for many years along with the infinite negative emotions at the same time. It was like the most thorough sublimation. It was a breakthrough on the spiritual level, which made his state of mind more perfect invisibly. On that day, Li Tianlan not only used the stop formula, which represented the pseudo-invincible realm in the Qi-controlling realm, but also condensed the third shadow. Although the third shadow could not perfectly imitate all his movements, it was enough to show that Li Tianlan had not only reached the limit of the qi-controlling realm, but also, like tribulation, he had broken through the invisible limit, and after breaking the limit, he went further. This was what the three of them were ecstatic about. However, Li Tianlan did not get carried away. After a successful breakthrough, he only stabilized it for a day. Then he immediately prepared to break through to the ice-condensing realm. He had broken through the limit of the qi-controlling realm. From this point of view, Li Tianlan could now take the same path as tribulation. The path that tribulation had taken had appeared in front of him vaguely. It was a rugged and steep road, and it could be said that one step was like ascending to heaven. Although Li Tianlan had only taken one step, this small step was enough for him to cross the gap between the ice-condensing realm and the fire-flaming realm. This small step seemed small, but the growth of his combat capability was immeasurable. The battle of the heavenly sun was just around the corner. Li Tianlan, who had broken through the limit of the qi-controlling realm, now had the capital to compete. But if he could enter the ice-condensing realm as soon as possible, his strength would be even more terrifying. The limit of the qi-controlling realm was entering the ice-condensing realm. Li Tianlan was determined to win. So he still did not leave the old warehouse on the temporary training ground. For 2 consecutive days, in addition to resting and continuing to comprehend unique skills, he only had to meditate. After recultivating, killing Gu Changjiang and breaking through the limit of the qi-controlling realm were counted as one. His willpower and spirit had broken through twice in a row in a short period of time, and now his meditation time was getting longer and longer. In the last 2 days, his realm of martial arts was simply advancing at a tremendous pace, constantly rising. Thunder God's life also became lonely. He was nearly 50 years old, and had long lost the hope of becoming an invincible realm expert. Every day, he would meditate for 1 or 2 hours and train for 1 or 2 hours. As long as he maintained his willpower, concentration and physical fitness, and did not let his state decline, he would be fine. Therefore, during the time when Li Tianlan was meditating to break through, Thunder God, who had nothing to do but could not leave, was bored every day. Tribulation was no longer on the training ground. On the day that Li Tianlan broke through, he gave Tribulation a sword manual of unknown origin. Tribulation held the sword manual, and stood in the same place for 6 or 7 hours. Then he left without saying a word, and began to practice in seclusion. Tribulation, who was now 38 years old, really did not have much time. He must firmly grasp any opportunity that might make him one step closer to the invincible realm. Therefore, in this warehouse, except for Li Tianlan, who spent most of his time meditating, Thunder God was the only one left. The moonlight was cold and lonely. It was already midnight. In front of the warehouse, Thunder God, who had made a pot of broth, stirred it with a spoon in boredom. Occasionally, he looked back at the inside of the warehouse with a bored face. Under the pale moonlight, a tall and plump Western woman walked over unhurriedly. Her long golden hair fluttered in the moonlight, making her look indescribably sexy and gorgeous. Horsewoman. Thunder God, who had just filled a bowl of soup for himself, raised his eyebrows and chuckled. "I just made soup. Would you like a bowl?" "I'm not hungry." Horsewoman spoke a little stiff but full of exotic Chinese and said softly, "I'll go with you." Thunder God nodded slightly. Dongqing clan and Samsara Palace were not familiar with each other before, and it could even be said that they had no interaction. But in the battle when Samsara destroyed Night Spirit, Dongqing clan gave out 10 heavenly rainbows in succession. The two sides seemed to have become close because of this transaction. A month ago, before Samsara launched a large-scale attack on Samsara, it was Thunder God who traded with Samsara with 10 heavenly rainbows. Now they met again. They could be regarded as acquaintances. "Have you decided on the candidate?" Thunder God drank the soup and said casually, "Will Tribulation lead the team?" Thunder God was a participant in this action, but he was not the most important leader and planner, so he still knew little about this highly confidential action. However, Samsara Palace was involved in this action. As one of the 12 super masters of Samsara Palace, Horsewoman must know more than him. Yes, Horsewoman spoke awkwardly in Chinese and said in a sexy and serious tone. Tribulation is in charge of the action in East Island. But this is only in name, because the division of labor of Zhongzhou State's hidden god Situt Songyue is not clear. She may also appear in East Island. Of course, she may also appear in other places. Thunder God was thoughtful. After a while he said calmly, what about the specific candidates? Tribulation Yu Mi Duke Flaming Fire Breeze Gu Yunxia, Yi Fengcheng, Qin Ke Bai Yuming 3 Wang Shengxiao Skeleton, Gu Qingming Black Pupil. A series of names burst out of Horsewoman's mouth, which sounded too much for the eyes to take in. The corner of Thunder God's mouth twitched violently, and he didn't speak for a long time. The specific candidates he asked naturally referred to the experts above the thunder-shocking realm in this action. And Horsewoman obviously understood what he meant correctly. The 15 names that came out of her mouth were all thunder-shocking realm experts. 15 thunder-shocking realm experts. And obviously, this was just a part of this action. It's really a big deal. Thunder God was silent for a while, and then he muttered to himself. Horsewoman was silent for a while, and then she continued. We're about to assemble. Young Master Tianlan I'm ready. A gentle voice sounded from inside the warehouse. Thunder God and Horsewoman turned their heads at the same time. In front of the warehouse, under the bright moonlight, there were raindrops falling, and suddenly the air was filled with moisture. A clear and transparent stream of water flowed out of the warehouse door. The water did not disperse, but was clear and condensed. It flowed for dozens of meters and finally stopped in front of Thunder God and Horsewoman. As the two thunder-shocking realm experts subconsciously narrowed their eyes, the water flowing in front of them stopped and then swelled up. Water splashed all over the sky, and Li Tianlan had already appeared in front of them. His clothes were dry and his smile was gentle. This is... Thunder God opened his mouth and looked incredulous. Tribulation's shadow formula was famous in the dark world, but it was completely different from shadow transposition, and Li Tianlan's step out of a splash. When Tribulation's unique skill reached the ice-condensing realm, would it have such a form? Did he know it himself? It's the same as shadow transposition. The Horsewoman said softly. Thunder God was in a trance just now, but she saw it clearly. The moment the water splashed, the first thing that appeared was a shadow condensed by water, and then Li Tianlan appeared directly. However, this process was much faster than when he was in the chi-controlling realm. With such progress, when Li Tianlan reached the thunder-shocking realm and exchanged places with the shadow, his speed was almost no less than that of Tribulation himself. She smiled softly and said respectfully, Congratulations, young Master Tianlan. I'm not a young master. Li Tianlan waved his hand and said with a wry smile, Super King, if you don't mind, call me by my name in the future. How about I call you Horsewoman? Horsewoman smiled and nodded. Okay. Little Bai, Li Tianlan hesitated a little and asked. The boss is in a meeting at the moment, but she told me to bring this to you. Horsewoman's tone became softer. She carefully took out a wooden box from her pocket and handed it to Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan took the box and glanced at it. He could only see a few English letters on it, but he didn't know what they meant. He opened the box. In his sight, a crystal-clear container appeared in front of him. The container contained more than half of a tube of sky-blue liquid. The light was gentle and clear. This is a very special potion in the dark world, codenamed Surge. It's the most useful to you now. Horsewoman said softly. Surge, Thunder God suddenly asked. Is it the chicken rib potion in North America? Why is it chicken rib? Li Tianlan closed the box in his hand and asked slowly. Thunder God looked at Horsewoman and said nothing. Horsewoman smiled and said softly. Surge is indeed chicken rib, but it's equally valuable. This potion can greatly enhance the strength of the user for 3 months. To be exact, it should be able to enhance the strength of the user by a big realm. And there are no sequelae. But the chicken rib is that this potion is only effective for experts below the thunder-shocking realm. Li Tianlan was suddenly moved. The potion could enhance the combat strength by a big realm in 3 months, and there were no sequelae. Although the adapted strength level was a little low, its effect was immeasurable. It was ineffective for experts of the thunder-shocking realm, which meant that this potion was most suitable for elites at the peak of the ice-condensing realm, or even the fulfillment realm. The combat strength of the peak of the fire-flaming realm in 3 months was simply terrifying. It couldn't be compared with the immortality potion, but it was definitely not chicken rib. This is the form of the dark world. Horsewoman seemed to see Li Tianlan's doubts and explained softly, below the thunder-shocking realm, except for a few experts of the fire-flaming realm, most of the destructive power is not enough to attract attention. This bottle of surge potion is a product developed by a laboratory in North America. Originally, it was intended to create a batch of experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm, to besiege the invincible realm. But after the result came out, everyone was very disappointed, because this potion has no effect on experts of the thunder-shocking realm at all. It can only arm some experts of the ice-condensing realm and the fire-flaming realm. But the cost of surge is too expensive. If it is manufactured in bulk, it is not worth it at all. If an expert of the fire-flaming realm is converted into money, it is even less than half of the price of surge. Therefore, after the invention of surge, the laboratory did not mass-produce it, because it was simply meaningless. Li Tianlan looked down at the wooden box in his hand, his eyes burning. This kind of thing was chicken rib in the dark world, but its value in his hands was unimaginable. This time he successfully broke through the chi-controlling realm and entered the ice-condensing realm. If he took the surge potion, his strength would soar to the fire-flaming realm. What did this mean? A Li Tianlan of the fire-flaming realm was almost invincible among the younger generation. The value of this bottle of potion to Li Tianlan was simply immeasurable. This is the surge potion that Palace Master personally got. Do you want to take it now? You can absorb it in half an hour. Horsewoman smiled and said, there is still some time before the assembly time. I can make it. Li Tianlan hesitated and finally shook his head, saying, not for the time being. Where is my martial uncle? He has gained something. He has been in closed-door training these days. Thunder God explained on the side. Go to the assembly. Go a little earlier. Li Tianlan nodded and took 2 steps forward before he remembered that the action was about to begin, and the team was ready to assemble. But until now he still didn't know what they were going to do. At the same time, in the office of the political department of the Sky Academy, a female figure in a moon-white loose robe appeared in front of the minister's office. In the darkness, the color of her white robe was obvious, but her whole body seemed to be integrated with the darkness, which looked contradictory and harmonious. The door is unlocked. She hesitated in front of the office door for 2 seconds, and then a low and hoarse voice sounded outside the door, calm and indifferent. The white figure paused, pushed the door open and entered. The light in the office was soft. The woman in the white robe walked into the office, glanced at the surrounding environment casually, and said softly, not bad. She wore a golden mask that covered most of her face. Her long hair was tied up, and her body was covered by the loose robe. Neither her face nor her figure could be seen. She was like a white shadow, blank and lonely. Sister, will you go to East Island with us? Tribulation sat on the sofa, looked at the white shadow in front of him, and asked softly. In the entire Zhongzhou state, there was only one person who could be called sister by Tribulation. Situt Songyue, the hidden god of Zhongzhou state and the governor of Sai City. No. Situt Songyue glanced at her brother. Behind the golden mask, her cold and blank eyes seemed to soften. I'm here to tell you that I'll go to North America next. Gu Qianchuan will take charge of Western Europe, and you'll lead the team to East Island. This time, you can only rely on yourself. Tribulation nodded calmly and said, it's okay. He sat quietly on the sofa, looking the same as usual. But if one felt carefully, one could feel that the current tribulation seemed to be darker and more mysterious than before. This battle is very big, and the situation is complicated. You must be careful in East Island. Situt Songyue glanced at Tribulation and continued. Zhongzhou State contacted Lin Fengting a few hours ago. Lin Fengting refused to take action, and it is estimated that he will leave tomorrow. Gu Qianchuan was originally appointed as the commander of the Snowdance Corps, and the commander-in-chief of the front line of this battle, but it is said that he had a conflict with Lin Fengting. The hat of the commander of the Snowdance Corps will not change, but the title of commander-in-chief will be gone. He will take charge of Western Europe and can affect North America and East Island. This may be the best news for us. Is there any movement from East Island? Tribulation suddenly asked. He had been in closed-door training these days, so he didn't know much about the spectators who came to the Sky Academy. But this time it was related to the interests of East Island. In any case, they couldn't miss the battle between the god of war of Zhongzhou State and the master of Samsara Palace. But it was hard to say who the three invincible realm experts of East Island would be. In East Island, Wuji Sword Sect and Jifeng Sword Sage will come to Zhongzhou State to watch the ceremony. Situt Songyue simply said. Sword Sect and Sword Sage. East Island always use some bluff-sounding titles to promote themselves. But the two East Island magnates of Kendo came to Zhongzhou State in person, so there was only one native invincible realm expert left in East Island. Tribulation nodded calmly and said, I see. Tribulation, don't be careless. Situt Songyue said in a serious tone. The battle situation in East Island is different from that in Western Europe and North America. The pressure you are facing is unimaginable. And Zhongzhou State has got the news that the one who ranks ahead of you on the killer list has accepted a mysterious commission to go to East Island. The deposit alone is $500 million. At present, the target of the other party is not clear. But if it's you. In recent years, the killer list in the dark world had been dominated by three giants. The top three killers, or rather the top three assassins, had dominated the killer list in recent years. On the killer list, Tribulation ranked second, and coincidentally, the two super assassins before and after him also had the same code name. Evil. The number one killer in the dark world today, and also the only killer of the invincible realm. After Evil, Tribulation, who took the unusual path, ranked second. The third super assassin, codenamed Shang, was a killer of the half-step invincible realm. All the killers and assassins in the dark world, no matter how brilliant they were overshadowed by these three. Now Evil accepted a mysterious commission with a deposit of $500 million to go to East Island, and Tribulation was going to lead a team there. Was all this a coincidence? Or was it intentional? In the face of the war, there was no turning back now. Not to mention Situt Songyue, even the Samsara Palace, which planned all this, might not be able to see the situation clearly now. This action was almost no different from a big gamble. Tribulation narrowed his eyes slightly, but still nodded and said nothing. Take Sunset with you. Situt Songyue was silent for a while, then suddenly said softly. Tribulation paused slightly, then shook his head and said, no need. Each of the 12 murderous weapons had the ability to threaten the life and death of an invincible realm expert. If Tribulation took Sunset with him, his combat capability would go straight to the invincible realm. But if Evil really went to East Island for him, it would be a duel between the two top super killers in the dark world today. The aggressive Sunset might play a role, but not much. If Sunset was in Situt Songyue's hands, her trip to North America would be more reassuring for Tribulation. Situt Songyue still wanted to say something, but Tribulation's figure had disappeared. An almost transparent shadow was left on the sofa. The shadow's whole body was almost transparent. Of the two palms that used to be filled with black gas, one hand was almost transparent now. Only the other hand was filled with darkness. Situt Songyue's eyes lit up slightly, then she sighed softly. The bell in the office rang. At 3 o'clock in the middle of the night. The night outside the window was silent. The dark world was already in turmoil. It was a little late to write a 6,000-word chapter. Well, that was not a reason. It was really a little difficult to write. Announce this reader group. 6705485667. I will update it every day in advance in the reader group. Welcome to join. Chapter 133. The students of the academy were gathering urgently, but the higher-ups were still in a meeting. In the conference room of the Sky Academy, the atmosphere was oppressive and solemn. Zhuang Huayang, the headmaster of the Sky Academy, vice headmaster, Gu Yunxia, the the director of teaching, and Chao Huazhang, the head of the tactical staff department. In the entire Sky Academy, except for Tribulation, who was still in closed-door training, almost all the higher-ups of the academy, including the leaders of the major course groups, had arrived. The conference room was crowded with people. However, Zhuang Huayang, the headmaster of the Sky Academy, was not sitting in the main seat. Not to mention the main seat, he was not even in the seats near the main seat. Several old and middle-aged men in military uniforms or casual clothes lined up one by one around the main seat. When it came to Zhuang Huayang's seat, it was already in the middle of the line. No matter what system or level of the conference in Zhongzhou State, seniority was extremely important, and people should take the corresponding position. As the headmaster of the Sky Academy and the general of the special warfare system in Zhongzhou State, Zhuang Huayang could only be in the middle. It could be seen that the standard of this conference was very high. There was silence in the conference room. Everyone held a list in their hands and looked at it attentively. The names on the list were not long, but each of the names carried great weight. Therefore, even after everyone looked at it several times, no one spoke. Let's talk about our views. In the main seat of the conference room, a powerful old man in military uniform silently put down the list in his hand, glanced around, and said in a deep voice. The old man looked to be in his 60s or 70s, but he didn't look like he was past his prime. His hair was white, and because of his old age, he wore a pair of reading glasses when he looked at the name list. However, the eyes behind the glasses were extremely fierce and dignified. As his eyes swept across the room, a heavy pressure suddenly whistled through the conference room. Everyone subconsciously straightened their bodies, and their expressions became more and more serious. There was still silence in the conference room. The old man frowned slightly and became more dignified. It was a kind of momentum that had nothing to do with martial arts, but was developed because of his long-term high position. He was tough, iron-blooded, and domineering. His every move seemed to be the law. Old Zhuang, you talk. His eyes finally fell on Zhuang Huayang's face, and he said in a calm tone. Zhuang Huayang straightened up subconsciously and coughed. This meeting was not an ordinary chat. As the principal of the Sky Academy, his words carried weight. He might be old enough in terms of seniority, but in terms of power, he was really not in the front. Now that the old man on the main seat asked him to talk, he had to talk. Because in a sense, the old man on the main seat was the real number one person in the military of Zhongzhou State. The Special Warfare Group of Zhongzhou State was actually led by Gu Xingyun, but at least on the surface, the old man in front of him was the supreme leader of the Special Warfare Group of Zhongzhou State. Qi Beizong, a member of the decision-making committee of Zhongzhou State, and the executive minister of the army headquarters. He was the standing minister of the military, not the deputy minister. When the academics took over the supreme power of Zhongzhou State from the Prince Group united with the Special Warfare Group to push Qi Beizong to the current position, and removed the word deputy behind the standing minister. How cruel this move was. Those who were not involved could not feel the pain at all. If the academics were not in an extremely difficult situation, they would not be in a hurry to cooperate with the giant group and the Dongqing clan. All kinds of thoughts kept flashing in Zhuang Huayang's mind, but he remained calm on the surface. He said with a calm smile, I fully agree with the battle plan of the army headquarters. The Sky Academy will fully cooperate with us. The list of the second batch of elites will be reported to the army headquarters in Kunlun City within 3 days. Qi Beizong nodded. Although what he said was hollow, at least he showed his attitude. His dignified eyes turned and finally fell on an ordinary-looking middle-aged man beside him with extremely sharp eyes. Dongsheng, what do you think? Qi Beizong, the standing minister of the army headquarters. Yi Dongsheng, the god of army of Zhongzhou State. Dongqing Wudi, the god of massacre of Zhongzhou State. These were the only 3 military marshals in the military today. Although Gu Xingyun and the newly promoted Gu Qianchuan in the special warfare system were also marshals, the concealment of the special warfare system meant that they could not be exposed to the public. Therefore, the 3 military marshals became the 3 well-known figures with the highest military ranks in Zhongzhou State. One represented the Special Warfare Group, one represented the Southeast Group, and one represented the Giant Group. Although they all had different standpoints, now was the time for full cooperation. Even if they had their own thoughts, they had the same goal, so the difference in standpoints was faint. Yi Dongsheng looked at the list in front of him silently and did not speak for a while. The list for each person was not long, but it was definitely not short either. At the top was the list of the spectators. Wuji Sword Sect of East Island. Jifeng Sword Sage of East Island. Huan Kong, the Lord of Fantasy World. Chaos, the Commander of Knights Templars. Jiang Qianyan, the Second Master of the Jiang family of South America. 5 Invincible Realm Experts. This was the most eye-catching name on the whole list. Of course, the list of those who came to watch the ceremony was not just these 5 people, or the 5 superpowers. However, people from other superpowers all sent experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm to watch the ceremony. Although they were not light, at the moment, they were all people who could be temporarily put aside. Below the list of the spectators was the internal list of Zhongzhou State. The list involved the Sky Academy, the Deep Sea Academy, the Border Praetorian Corps, the 4 Theaters of War, the Shadow Sting Army, the Beihai Military Region, Kunlun City, and various Special Operations Bureaus. There were so many names, many of which were very familiar to Yi Dongsheng. He looked at them silently. After a long time he smiled and said, "There's no problem with the plan. As long as it's executed properly, there won't be any problems in the early stage. As for what will happen in the future, we will make the next plan in Zhongzhou State based on the intelligence from the front line. We'll deal with it when it comes." Qi Baitsong nodded with satisfaction and subconsciously stroked his gray hair. Yi Dongsheng was known as the god of army of the empire. He was a real expert in arranging troops and formations. If he said there was no problem, it might not mean that the plan was really perfect, but it represented the judgment of the peak-level tactical vision of Zhongzhou State to a certain extent. "Wudi, what's the situation of the Border Control Corps? Do you have anything to say about this plan?" Dongqing Wudi was sitting next to Qi Baitsong, face to face with Yi Dongsheng. Hearing this, he shook his head and said blandly, "The 50,000 elites transferred from the 5 subordinate armies of the Border Control Corps will arrive in Huading before dawn. What I'm worried about now is not the domestic situation, but East Island. This is the top priority of this battle. Is it a little insecure for Tribulation to lead the team?" Qi Baitsong was silent. Tribulation leading the team to East Island was not a perfect plan, but it was relatively the best one. Although the most powerful assassin in Zhongzhou State was not on the list of the top 10 contemporary experts in Zhongzhou State, almost no one under the 4 invincible realm experts was his match. With such strength, he was the most suitable candidate to go to East Island. In the past 2 decades, the invincible realm experts of the previous generation in Jade Pool and Kunlun City died. The old patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai died of illness. The Li family was imprisoned at the border, and Li Kuangtu committed treason. This could be said to be the most difficult period for the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. The special warfare system was not short of time, but with the death of the older generation, it was an indisputable fact that the younger generation had not yet grown up. Zhongzhou State, known as the most powerful country in the world, had only 4 invincible realm experts as strategic resources, which was only one more than the invincible realm experts on the surface in East Island. If Wang Tianzong, Gu Xingyun, and Situtsong Yue had all entered the divine list and occupied the 1st, 4th, and 15th places, such an embarrassing special warfare system of Zhongzhou State might have already encountered strong challenges from the outside world. Today, Zhongzhou State was prosperous, but the special warfare system was in decline. Although there was no obvious provocation, in recent years, the elites of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State encountered more and more resistance when they performed tasks in the outside world. As Zhongzhou State grew stronger and stronger in military power, some neighboring countries gradually became more and more uneasy. Instigated by some Western countries with ulterior motives, several neighboring countries in Zhongzhou State had constant frictions in the dark world, and some conflicts had become more and more intense. In the past, when Zhongzhou State was not the most powerful country in the world, it was jointly constrained by many neighboring countries. Now when Zhongzhou State was strong and the strength of the special warfare system shrank, It was also pulled by many neighboring countries, and even covetously eyed it. Zhongzhou state needed a chance to break this increasingly difficult situation, which was the common demand of all major groups in Zhongzhou state. And to break this situation, East Island, which was composed of 3 big islands and countless small islands, had a land area of only 300,000 square kilometers, which was less than 1/30th of Zhongzhou state, but had 3 invincible realm experts, was the key of the key. Among the many countries near Zhongzhou state, East Island was the most powerful country in terms of comprehensive strength, economy, military power, and martial arts. East Island had always been a chess piece cultivated by the Western powers, and used to check and balance Zhongzhou state. This ambitious country could perfectly unite Gaoshan state, Annan state, Hung state, and other countries to fight against Zhongzhou state. Especially when the strength of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou state was gradually weakening. Their ambition had become more and more unstoppable. The master of Samsara Palace challenged the god of war of Zhongzhou state. It was the battle of the invincible realm. 2 of the 3 invincible realm experts of East Island came to watch the ceremony as soon as possible, which was enough to show the deep attitude behind this move. As long as they could control or suppress the development of the special warfare power of East Island, the other countries around Zhongzhou state were nothing to worry about. And the Western powers were too far away to reach out to deal with Zhongzhou state. In this way, Zhongzhou state had a lot of time to stabilize its backyard and regain its position. The Night Spirit organization was destroyed in Billi state. But people who reached a certain level in the Dark World knew that although the headquarters of the Night Spirit was in Billi state, their deepest foundation was in East Island. Tian Ling and Tian Xian, the 2 fallen invincible realm experts, had been secretly serving the East Island government for many years. Now that the Night Spirit was destroyed, their countless foundations and resources were all concentrated in East Island. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were half of the special warfare system of East Island. And what Zhongzhou state wanted this time was the special warfare system of East Island. The master of Samsara Palace challenged the god of war of Zhongzhou state. It was true at the beginning. But as old master Dongqing said, Gu Xingyan dared to fight, but he dared not or was unwilling to fight to the death with the master of Samsara Palace. But because of his identity, he couldn't really be timid and avoid a fight. So how to express his meaning obscurely, and get the approval of the master of Samsara Palace became his thing to consider. Bai Yuming entering the Sky Academy was only a small part of it. Cool Breeze and Drifting Cloud of Sai City would also find their own positions of real power after this battle. There were a lot of deals behind the scenes. These were the bargaining chips that Gu Xingyan gave to not fight to the death. The master of Samsara Palace naturally agreed with such a deal. So the original fight to the death directly and secretly evolved into the plot of Zhongzhou state. The fight to the death had become a show. While most people were focused on this battle of the invincible realm, the main purpose of Zhongzhou state was to attack the special warfare system of East Island and detonate a fierce battle in the Dark World in East Island. So from the very beginning, the fight to the death and the secret action of Zhongzhou state, including the competition of the Heavenly Sons, were the same thing. More than a month passed. The date of the battle was approaching. Zhongzhou state also secretly established the Snowdance Corps, the Border Control Corps, the 4 theaters of operations Kunlun City, Sai City, Shadow Sect, Shadow Sting Force, Beihai Military Region. The Special Operations Bureaus and Independent Action Groups of Zhongzhou state all transferred the most elite forces to join the Snowdance Corps. In a month, the current size of the Snowdance Corps had exceeded 15,000 people. The corps was divided into 3 parts. Gu Qianchuan led the team to the west and guarded Western Europe. Situ Songyue went straight to North America to contain the fantasy world. The Knights Templars in Western Europe, like the fantasy world and Night Spirit in North America, were secretly supported by other countries behind the scenes. The conflicts between the superpowers in the Dark World were more or less related to the games between the countries behind them. Situ Songyue and Gu Qianchuan led the team to Western Europe and North America. Their purpose was not to fight with the Knights Templars and the fantasy world to the death. They only needed to contain the main forces of the 2 superpowers in their homeland and prevent them from supporting East Island. Such a task sounded simple, but only experts of the invincible realm could do it. Zhongzhou State could only send Situt Songyue and Gu Qianchuan. All the real plots of Zhongzhou State were concentrated in East Island. The two invincible realm experts of East Island came to Zhongzhou State to watch the ceremony. It was foreseeable that the two of them could not go back before there was a clear result in East Island. Even Huan Kong, the ruler of the fantasy world and chaos, the commander of the Knights Templars, who were most likely to support East Island, were the same. They were plotting against the special warfare system of East Island and the status of Zhongzhou State in the Dark World decades later. Although tribulation was strong, how could he deal with the supreme ninja of the invincible realm and evil? The killer of the invincible realm in East Island? Thinking about it, it seemed that it was really not safe. But in addition to tribulation, who else could lead this operation? It was not that no one thought of Li Honghe, who was far away at the border, but this candidate could only be thought of at most. Everyone knew that it was completely impossible for Li Honghe to come out again. Even Samsara was opposed to this matter. Wang Tianzong guarded Zhongzhou State. Gu Xingyun and the master of Samsara Palace acted. Situt Songyue and Gu Qianchuan went to Western Europe and North America respectively. Only Tribulation was the most qualified person to lead the army in East Island. But as for whether he could control or greatly limit the special warfare system of East Island in a short time, no one was sure about this. Tribulation is under a bit of pressure. Qi Beitsong was silent for a long time, and then slowly said, "But there is no other way. The first batch of people of the Snowdance Corps is ready. As for the second batch, we will put them in the front line of East Island first. This is the greatest support I can give them." He paused and suddenly looked at Qin Weibai on the opposite side. He smiled and said very kindly, "Boss Qin, what do you think?" Although Qin Weibai was extremely young, she was one of the important planners of this matter. She appeared here on behalf of Samsara Palace. This identity was enough to make her confident to face Qi Beitsong, the #1 person in the military of Zhongzhou State. "Don't worry about East Island." Qin Weibai sat opposite Qi Beitsong. She was wearing a white shirt and black tights. She sat there casually, but she was like a scenery that people would willingly sink into. She paused and continued to say with a smile, "As long as the second batch of people of the Snowdance Corps can arrive in East Island on time, there will be no big problem in East Island." "Oh." Qi Beitsong took a deep look at Qin Weibai and said meaningfully, "Boss Qin, does Palace Master have any arrangement?" He dared not look down on Samsara and Qin Weibai more and more. Qin Weibai smiled. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. Qi Beitsong looked at Yi Dongsheng on the side, intentionally or unintentionally. The high-level officials of Zhongzhou State had doubts about the cooperation between Samsara and Zhongzhou State this time. After all, if this plan succeeded, all the groups in Zhongzhou State would gain a lot. In contrast, Samsara's gain was not enough. Moreover, once Zhongzhou State controlled the special warfare situation of several nearby countries, its dependence on Samsara would be greatly reduced. In this way, Samsara Palace seemed to be at a disadvantage. But Samsara Palace was the first force to put forward this plan. All their goals were now hidden behind them. Even Qi Beitsong, an old fox, didn't dare to have the slightest carelessness in the face of the devastatingly beautiful Qin Weibai. Yi Dongsheng seemed to notice Qi Beitsong's gaze. After thinking about it, he finally nodded slightly. Qi Beitsong took a deep breath and said calmly, "Then it's decided. The candidates of the three parties remain unchanged. Tribulation will lead the team to East Island. After I return to Yuzhou, I will apply for a plenary meeting of the decision-making committee to decide the number and strength of the second group of people." Everyone nodded at the same time. Opposite Qi Beitsong, Qin Weibai sipped water, her eyes calm and deep. Perhaps among all the people present, she was the only one who knew that there was no possibility of failure in the scheme that involved the whole nation of Zhongzhou State this time. But the final success might not be what some people in Zhongzhou State imagined. Some grudges would eventually be revealed, and some people would eventually appear. She had created a great opportunity in the dark world. It was a godsend. If she didn't seize it, she would be struck by lightning. Qin Weibai drank water silently. He observed the faces in the conference room without batting an eyelid. The result of this plan might not be what Zhongzhou State wanted. But for her, it didn't matter at all. As long as the final result was what she wanted, it would be okay. The power of the whole country, the plan to overthrow a country. Qin Weibai smiled. In recent years, Zhongzhou State had been under more and more pressure in the dark world. The cooperation between Samsara and Zhongzhou State was also pleasant. But did these old people at the top of Zhongzhou State really think that Samsara Palace was a living lei feng? She thoroughly adjusted her work and rest schedule. The next chapter would be a little later. She would start to make up for the chapters she owed after adjusting the time. It wouldn't take too long. Today was enough. Announce this reader group. 6705485567 every day. I will update it in the reader group in advance. Welcome to join. Chapter 134. A 6,000-word chapter. This chapter is yesterday's. There are 2 chapters left today. My time is back. Walking out of the training ground, on the way to the assembly, Li Tianlan finally knew the top-secret operation that had been operating in secret for a month. The power of the whole country, the plan to overturn the country. In a month, the Snowdance Corps was established and included all the elite institutions in Zhongzhou State. East, West, and down to North America. They were just the first batch of elites of the Snowdance Corps. No one knew how many people there would be later. But if the goal of the whole country could not be achieved, Zhongzhou State would certainly not give up. How many elites would be involved in the end of this operation? How many thunder-shocking realm experts? How many invincible realm experts? Zhongzhou State, East Island, North America, and Western Europe. The turbulent general trend formed by the 4 battlefields was about to sweep the entire dark world. For the first time, Li Tianlan felt that kind of surging and heavy power. Someone was building momentum in the dark, and someone was brewing in the dark. When the general trend was about to rise and the wind and clouds were surging, both the ice-condensing realm elites and the invincible realm experts were part of the rumbling general trend. They had no choice but to move forward. Li Tianlan took a deep breath. His battlefield was in East Island, which could be said to be the most critical place in the whole operation. Gu Qianchuan attacked the forces of Fantasy World in Western Europe. Situt Songyue attacked the forces of Knights Templars in North America. Instead of attacking their headquarters, they attacked their important branches. Such a move might eventually arouse the cooperation of Fantasy World and Knights Templars. But at least in the beginning, the 2 superpowers would acquiesce to Gu Qianchuan and Situt Songyue's behavior of helping them eliminate dissidents. When the 2 superpowers joined forces, it might be the end of the operation. But East Island was different. Gu Qianchuan targeted the dark forces of North America in Western Europe, and Situt Songyue attacked the forces of Western Europe in North America. There was a lot of room for maneuver. In the trip to East Island, they were under high pressure from East Island from the very beginning. They were the enemies of the entire East Island. Do we have a chance of winning? Li Tianlan thought for a long time, and then asked calmly. 70%. Horsewoman no longer called Li Tianlan young master, but before she walked, she instinctively stayed half a step behind him, and her tone was calm and respectful. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and said calmly, "How many people do we have in East Island? 1,000? 2,000? In the end, even if the number increased to 10,000 or 100,000, they might still be no match for East Island, right? How far do we have to go to win? That's not how it works." Horsewoman's tone was soft as she said with a smile, "This is not a large-scale open war. The war in the dark world is about infiltration and concealment. Our trip this time means that we're the enemy of the entire East Island, but it doesn't count." She paused and seemed to think about it carefully. Then she continued, "Take our Samsara for example. If the Samsara goes east and points directly at Kunlun City, even if Zhongzhou State gives Kunlun City support, it will be in secret. The dark world knows that Zhongzhou State has Kunlun City and Sai City, but Zhongzhou State doesn't admit it. They only admit that the god of war of Zhongzhou State is Gu Xingyun. On the surface, Kunlun City has little to do with Zhongzhou State. This is the concealment of the special warfare system. So, Li Tianlan lit a cigarette and raised his tone slightly. So since they can't admit it, then when the Samsara points directly at Kunlun City, Zhongzhou State can't speak for Kunlun City openly. They can send masters to target Samsara, but all the rules are the rules of the dark world. Once they cross the line, it will be a real war. Thousands of us are no match for East Island, but with the current national strength of Zhongzhou State, it won't even take a month to destroy East Island. East Island doesn't dare to gamble. Li Tianlan nodded. It was not difficult for him to understand what horsewoman meant. There were basically no rules in the dark world, but once the rules were established, breaking them would have to bear countless serious consequences. Kunlun City belonged to Zhongzhou State, but it was not in the official voice of Zhongzhou State. Of course, Zhongzhou State would not do this for no reason. The dark world could be said to be a general term for all kinds of shady people and forces. In recent years, Kunlun City had done countless things for Zhongzhou State, which made many countries gnash their teeth in anger. But on the surface, Zhongzhou State and Kunlun City had nothing to do with each other. They found trouble with Kunlun City, but they couldn't find Zhongzhou State. This was a conflict in the dark world. But once Zhongzhou State used its official and visible power to help Kunlun City, the relationship between the two would be confirmed. At that time, perhaps many people would come to Zhongzhou State with old scores to ask for an explanation. The so-called real war might start because of this. The special warfare system of East Island was the same. Night Spirit was a force that they had raised outside many years ago. Now the Snowdance Corps wanted to take the foundation of Night Spirit in East Island. Even if East Island didn't agree, it couldn't do anything on the surface, because this was a matter between the Snowdance Corps and Night Spirit. East Island would secretly send experts to compete with the Snowdance Corps, but on the surface, it could only pretend that it didn't know anything. Once East Island got involved with Night Spirit, the Snowdance Corps would also get involved with Zhongzhou State. East Island couldn't afford the consequences. So on this trip to East Island, their opponents were not East Island, but countless experts of the special warfare system of East Island. This might sound no different, but in fact the difference was like heaven and earth. Samsara Palace, Kunlun City, Sai City, Snowdance Corps, Knights Templars, Fantasy World. This is just the beginning. As the situation changes, I don't know how many forces will get involved in the future. Horsewoman, do you think I should graduate from the Sky Academy when I come back? Li Tianlan sighed softly and said self-mockingly, I haven't had classes for a few days. No. Horsewoman said with a smile, we're just going to open up the situation this time. When the time is right, someone will show up. Her words were vague, but Li Tianlan didn't ask more. As one of the 12 super masters of Samsara Palace, Horsewoman might know a lot. Or she might know very little. Li Tianlan didn't know anything at the moment, but there were some questions that he didn't need to ask too clearly. This was a competition between the superpowers in the dark world. But for him, it was also a competition between the young generation of Zhongzhou State. What he wanted to do was not to participate in those tricks in the general trend of the competition. Under the general trend, he should be willing to stay dormant and go against the current. That was what he should do. I'm willing to be a chess piece. I don't want to jump out of the chessboard, I just want to move forward. On the way to the gathering place, Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself. Horsewoman smiled slightly and said nothing. When the two of them arrived at the gathering place, the 50 elites of the Sky Academy who participated in the special training had stood in a neat line. In front of the line was a high platform. Under the high platform was a shelf with dozens of wine bowls on it. But the high platform was empty under the light. For the time being, no high-level personnel had appeared. That's my place. Horsewoman pointed to the high platform and said in stiff Chinese, I'm going. Li Tianlan nodded slightly. Tianlan here. At the back of the line, Li Baiqian's tall and thin figure appeared in Li Tianlan's sight. He waved his hand vigorously with a bright smile, and a smug look on his face. Li Tianlan turned his eyes and saw Li Baiqian. He also saw Ning Qiancheng, Yi Huayu, Yu Qingyan, and Su Chu. who stood at the back of these people but attracted more attention than anyone else. He hadn't seen them for more than a month. Everyone seemed to have not changed, but their auras were much stronger. Li Tianlan felt a little warm in his heart and quickly walked over. Originally he wanted to bypass the crowd, but seeing him coming over, the two students in the front of the line hesitated and took the initiative to make way for him. Li Tianlan was slightly stunned. The next second, the line was completely separated and everyone made way for him. Li Tianlan passed through the crowd with a stunned look and looked at Li Beitian. What's going on? He might have some fame among the freshmen now, but it was not enough to make everyone afraid of him. Was it? They are all scared after being beaten by eldest senior brother. Li Beitian smiled and walked over to put his arm around Su Chu's shoulder affectionately. Su Chu was broad and Li Beitian was thin and weak. When the two stood together, it was really funny. Young master. Su Chu saw Li Tianlan's eyes sweep over and called him with a dull look. I have discussed with Beitian. Eldest senior brother will join East Emperor Palace. But now we are not arrogant, so eldest senior brother will follow you to protect your safety. This is also his intention. Ning Qianqing glanced at Li Tianlan and explained. Li Tianlan nodded slightly. Although he was still a little confused about Su Chu, at least it was not a bad thing for this fierce general to join East Emperor Palace. He took the initiative to stretch out his hand and said with a smile, "Welcome. Since we are all on the same side, don't call me young master from now on. Just call me by my name." Su Chu shook his head and did not shake hands. Instead he bowed again and said in a low voice, "Young master is young master." Facing this stubborn man, Li Tianlan could not say anything more for a while. He just nodded casually and stood among them without saying anything. "Hey Tianlan, you don't know that eldest senior brother is really fierce in the past month. Basically, no one can resist his punch, whether it is a freshman or a senior. Even Fan How you dare not take his punch head on. An expert at the peak of the fire-flaming realm is fierce and powerful. He can be said to be the top expert in our East Emperor Palace now." Li Beitian stood beside Li Tianlan and smiled. It seemed that he was a fox assuming the majesty of a tiger. "What about you? What have you gained in the past month?" Li Tianlan stared at the high platform in front of him and asked with a chuckle. "We're okay, but Qingyan is the most miserable one. In the past month or so, Director Qin tortured Qingyan so much that Qianqing felt sorry for her. Haha, Qianqing said that we should celebrate when we arrive at East Island." Li Beitian laughed strangely. "Celebrate?" Li Tianlan was confused. When he looked at Yu Qingyan again, he found that this girl with a simple and weak temperament was different from a month ago. She was still herself, but her clear eyes were still clear, and the innocence had been replaced by firmness. Li Tianlan followed her hand and looked over. In his sight, he saw Ning Qianqing and Yu Qingyan holding each other's hands tightly, their fingers interlocked. Li Tianlan looked enlightened and said with a smile, "We should indeed congratulate them. We should get drunk." He looked at Ning Qianqing's somewhat unnatural expression and joked, "You move fast, boy. It has only been a month." Yu Qingyan's face turned red. She lowered her head and said nothing, but she did not loosen her grip on Ning Qianqing's hand. Ning Qianqing coughed and changed the topic with a serious face. "Tianlan, how have you been in the past month? Have you broken through?" "I've condensed ice. I've gained a lot." Li Tianlan nodded with a smile. Before Ning Qianqing could congratulate him, Li Beitian, who was beside him, began to show off without hesitation. "Tianlan, your realm is a little low. I thought you could enter the fire-flaming realm. It seems that a genius like me is really hard to come by. Come on, I'll show you this." As he spoke, he directly reached out his hand. A flame sprang out from his palm. The flame surged and finally condensed into an unusually solid and delicate fire sword in his palm. The scorching and empty sword intent radiated, hollow and sharp, gathering fire into soldiers. This was already a sign of the stabilization phase of the fire-flaming realm. Li Tianlan's eyes lit up slightly. Li Beitian continued, "So I should be the second expert in the East Emperor Palace now." The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth twitched. He reached out and casually covered Li Beitian's palm. The fire sword in Li Baiqian's palm was still there, but all the sword intent froze in an instant. The water on Li Tianlan's palm spread down, and the fire in Li Baiqian's palm had completely disappeared. Just be honest and rank third. Li Tianlan chuckled and looked at Li Baiqian, who was dumbfounded. He chuckled and said, "The leader is here. Cut the crap." In his sight, a row of figures walked up the high platform one by one. Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed slightly. At the very front, a man with an ordinary appearance but extremely spirited eyes was walking at the very front. Beside him, there was a young figure that could topple nations and cities, walking side by side with him, peerless in style. At this moment, she seemed to have become the only person on the high platform. She was cold, yet dazzling. For a moment, everyone was dazzled by her. They even subconsciously ignored the other figures on the high platform. Even the appearance of the foreign woman knight did not cause much discussion and commotion. Only Li Tianlan's eyes remained calm. He took a deep look at the middle-aged man at the forefront and kept his composure. Yi Dongsheng. Except for the time at the border, this was the second time he saw the god of army of Zhongzhou state. Zhuang Huayang, Qin Ke Gu Yunxia tribulation, and Thunder God appeared one by one. Li Tianlan even saw Wang Xiaorao at the end. His eyes slowly turned and finally rested on Qin Weibai, who was walking side by side with Yi Dongsheng. His eyes were gentle. The whole line was silent. Sister-in-law is really too beautiful. Tianlan, you're such a tragedy. Li Baiqian looked at Qin Weibai, shook his head and sighed. He looked distressed. What kind of woman can interest you in the future? You're starting from a high point. Li Tianlan didn't bother to pay attention to him. He just focused on her on the high platform, who looked like a fairy descending to the world. He had never been so calm. Qin Weibai also looked at him and smiled softly. The moment they looked at each other, it seemed that they were each other's whole world. On and off the platform, the leaders and the students saluted each other. Yi Dongsheng, who was at the forefront, glanced around and finally stopped on Li Tianlan. His serious eyes seemed to soften. Zhongzhou State and Samsara conspired against East Island. Samsara asked for too little, so little that all the leaders had some doubts. Some radical leaders even thought it was a conspiracy of Samsara. But Li Tianlan was also on the list of East Island, which made some people suppress their inner doubts. The master of Samsara Palace went straight to Mount Dibbing for Li Tianlan, and even sacrificed herself with the Wang family of Beihai. Her protection of Li Tianlan was evident. With Li Tianlan, the leaders of Zhongzhou State finally decided to start this action even though they had doubts. But in the following time, Li Tianlan was bound to be the focus of their attention. He glanced at Li Tianlan and coughed softly. Everyone's eyes turned from Qin Weibai and fell on Yi Dongsheng. Qin Weibai seemed to realize something amidst countless jealous and fiery gazes. She quietly took a step back, blocking everyone's view of her. Yi Dongsheng's warm and soft voice continued to ring on the platform and floated into everyone's ears. Everyone, this action concerns the overall situation of Zhongzhou State, and even the fate of Zhongzhou State. At the airport 3 kilometers behind me, the plane is ready. In 40 minutes, all of you will set off for East Island with your mission. I don't know what you will see and hear next, but I can tell you for sure that this trip is a test for each of you. You will bleed, sacrifice, and be buried in a foreign land. You may encounter all kinds of desperate and dangerous situations. In East Island, you represent Zhongzhou State. Similarly in East Island, you are the enemies of the whole East Island. He paused and continued. Comrades of the Border Control Corps and the Eastern Theater of Operations secretly set off a week ago. You will be the last of the first batch. Before you set off, I want to ask you one more thing. Is there anyone who wants to quit this action? Silence. Total silence. Yi Dongsheng waited quietly for more than a minute and then continued. It seems that no one is going to give up this action. You all know what your choice means, so I don't need to say more. Let me tell you one last thing. When you go to East Island, you will be the most elite warriors of Zhongzhou State. East Island is the front line, the battlefield. There are no deserters on the battlefield. You can quit this action now, quit the Sky Academy, quit the special warfare system. But when you go to the battlefield, quitting is tantamount to treason. Do you understand? Yes. The 50 students under the platform said in unison. It was not a loud voice, but it was extremely firm and unshakable. Yi Dongxing took a deep breath and suddenly waved his hand. All the wine bowls on the shelf under the platform flew up and accurately floated in front of every student and every high-level official on the platform. Yi Dongxing picked up the wine bowl and smiled. Drink and sing. I will wait for your triumphant return in Zhongzhou State. Then I will sing a song to celebrate your success. He held the wine bowl and drank up the wine in it. Everyone followed his action and drank up the wine in front of them. This time, I hope that you will go forward with indomitable will and die a worthy death. Yi Dongxing put down the wine bowl, faced the audience, raised his hand with a solemn face, and made a military salute. The arms on and off the platform all rose up. The atmosphere was solemn and solemn. Let's go. Yi Dongxing put down his arm and said straightforwardly. There were no heroic words to boost morale. This oath before departure was more like a farewell. Send them to die. Go forward with indomitable will and die a worthy death. This was the cruel and bloody dark world. Elites should die. Warriors should die. The line under the platform walked to the airport in silence. The high-level officials on the platform also stepped down one by one. Tribulation, Thunder God, Qin Ke Gu Yunxia, Horsewoman. These were the thunder-shocking realm experts going to East Island. And Qin Weibai stepped down with these experts. The high-level officials who stayed on the platform all looked at Qin Weibai in surprise, but they didn't say anything. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Qin Weibai walked down the steps softly. The line passed in silence. When Qin Weibai walked down the last step, Li Tianlan and other people from East Emperor Palace were about to pass by the platform. Li Tianlan stopped and looked at the peerless beauty in front of him, who didn't seem to belong to the mortal world. He chuckled and said, "When did you come back?" "Not long ago," Qin Weibai said softly, and her eyes were deep and sentimental. "You've grown a lot taller." Li Tianlan nodded and said vaguely, "The medicine is very good. But you're still not as handsome as before," Qin Weibai said again. Li Tianlan didn't understand, but he didn't think much about it. Qin Weibai took a step forward, tidied his collar, and said softly, "Be careful. Horsewoman and Flaming Fire will protect you at any time. If you can't do it, you might as well give up the two. Anyway, you have to live." Horsewoman stood beside Qin Weibai, and her expression didn't change at all. Li Tianlan nodded slightly, reached out his hand, and held Qin Weibai's cool little hand. He said, "It's okay. I've received your medicine. Don't worry." Qin Weibai chuckled and suddenly took another step forward. She put her arms around Li Tianlan's neck, and her rosy and delicate little mouth directly pressed on Li Tianlan's. She was delicate, strong, and domineering. What did the opinion of the world have to do with her? Li Tianlan had always been the only person in her world. It was like that in the past, and it would be like that in the future. Everyone was dumbfounded. Li Beitian whistled and shouted with excitement. Ning Qianqing and the others applauded hard, looking very happy. Li Tianlan subconsciously put his arms around Qin Weibai's slender waist and kissed her seriously and carefully. On the high platform, only Wang Xiaoyao looked bitter. It wasn't embarrassment or anger, but a kind of loneliness and loss that came from his bones. Below the stage, the woman who was being hugged and kissed by someone else was someone he really liked and even loved. There was suddenly a trace of tenderness in the iron-blooded atmosphere between heaven and earth. After a long time, the kiss, as if there was no one else around, finally ended. Qin Weibai put her arms around Li Tianlan's neck tightly and quietly gasped. "I'll wait for you to come back. There will be a reward then." Li Tianlan patted Qin Weibai's back and said, The procession of students finally passed the high platform. Qin Weibai stood where she was and watched Li Tianlan's disappearing figure. She stood there motionlessly for a long time. "Go." Under the high platform, Qin Weibai suddenly said. Horsewoman, who had been standing beside Qin Weibai, responded and was about to leave. "Remember," Qin Weibai's cold voice sounded. "You can die, but nothing can happen to my man." that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.